There's a lot, yeah. We'll get it started. Everybody ready? All right. How's everybody doing today?
Very well.
I'd like to start by calling this meeting to order. I would like to welcome you all to today's town deliberative session for the town of Litchfield. My name is Steve Perry. I'm going to be serving as your moderator for today. I live at 5 Liston Lane with my wife, my 2 kids, Hannah and Nathan, and I have now lived in town for 24 years. So let's all please stand, if able, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe the flag is right there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to start with a few administrative announcements. This is the boring part of the meeting today. Before we commence our meeting, in consideration for warrants, there's a few housekeeping matters that we'd like to discuss. That state law prohibits smoking anywhere on school grounds. The restrooms that we're going to use today for everybody is out in the hall, just down to the left. Food and drink aren't supposed to be allowed. Please silence all cell phones so that we don't get disturbances we don't need. Emergency exits are the doors you came in, the doors in the back, the doors over there, and the doors over there. So there's plenty of exits if we got to get out of here. Lastly, let's please have all residents who are authorized to vote be seated from this section over. Any non-residents, just on the far right. Introductions. I would like to, first of all, my introduction will be my assistant moderator, Mr. Stephen Weber. Now I'd like to introduce the chairs of the committees so that they can introduce everybody for their respective boards. We will start with Mr. Bob Leary, Chairman of Selectmen.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bob Leary, I'm Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Fellow Selectmen is Kimberly Queenan, the Vice Chair, Kevin Lynch, John Brunel, and Steve Gannon. And we are also joined by the Town Administrator, Kim Kleiner, and Joe Driscoll, who is the Town Attorney.
I'd now like to introduce Budget Committee Chair, John David Sun.
Good afternoon. John David Sun, Chair of the Budget Committee. I'd like to introduce the Budget Committee members here today. We have Scott Taylor, Vice Chair, Brian Burke, Doug LaPlante, William Hayes, Andrew Cutter, School Board Rep, Bob Leary, Select Board Rep. Unable to be here today is Derek Barca and Carrie Douglas. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now start with the rules and procedures of the meeting.
Mr. Moderator, did we want to do department head introductions real quick?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Department head introductions real quick on the town side.
Do you want to do it?
I'll let
Bob
Mr.
do
Leary
it?
do it.
Let Bob do it.
All right. Department heads for the town. We have Daniel Jones, who is Police Chief, Doug Nickel, who's our Fire Chief, Karen White, Finance Director, Assistant Town Administrator, Terry Brian, Town Clerk, Tax Collector, Kevin Brown, Road Agent, Dave Mellon, Transfer Station Manager, John Brunel, the IT Director, also Selectman, Vicki Varick is the Librarian, and the Litchfield Community Television staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we will work on rules and procedures of the meeting. Litchfield operates under Senate Bill 2 procedure. This means that we will review, discuss, and amend as necessary the warrant articles presented today for vote on official ballot for Election Day. Election Day will be March 11th, 2025. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and they will be held here in the gymnasium. If we make no amendments to these warrant articles, they'll appear on the ballot as you see them today. If we do make amendments, they will appear on the ballot as you've amended them. For deliberative session, the moderator will read each warrant article and recognize a speaker. The moderator will then open the floor for discussion, questions, and amendments if appropriate. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment, he or she must present the moderator with a signed written draft that includes their property address. The moderator will then review the amendment for completeness and adherence to the law. If anybody needs to do that, make an amendment, we have index cards right here. I'll grab some pencils from out there once I'm done talking, and we'll have that so you can write them out if you want. The moderator will then read the proposed amendments so that all voters can understand, and afterwards will seek a second for the motion. Once moved and seconded, I will recognize the sponsoring voter to present their motion. Note, state law prohibits amendments if they change the primary subject matter of the original warrant article, nor can negative motions to amend be valid so that a no end up being tallied as a yes. We cannot have more than one amendment under consideration at any one time, so amendments to amendments are not allowed. Every effort will be made to give recognition to all of those who wish to speak. If you choose to speak, you must come down to the microphone that's up front. Board members wishing to speak, offering their own opinion or an amendment as a citizen, must exit the seated area and present it at the microphone at front. When speaking, please clearly state your name and street address for the record. All comments are to be directed to me, the moderator. The moderator will then prompt for a response. Comments are not meant to go into long dialogue, and continued dialogue may not be allowed due to the interest of time. Typically, one follow-up question is allowed. After that, please move to the back of the line and exercise fairness to all. Personal attacks and profanity are not permitted. Please try to avoid redundancy. Any motion to end debate must be made immediately after stating the name and address of the person at the microphone. The moderator will seek a second to the motion and then put the question to the voters. If successful, the moderator will immediately call for a vote to the question. A motion to adjourn will not be accepted until after all warrant articles have been discussed and finalized. According to state law, town and school district meetings are run by what's called moderator rules. This means that as I am doing now, the moderator sets the ground rules for the conduct of the meeting. However, law allows you, as the voters, to overturn my rulings by a simple majority vote. To overturn the moderator's ruling, a voter may request a point of order to overturn the moderator immediately after the moderator rules. The moderator will then recognize the voter, who may, if desired, explain his or her point of order. The moderator will then poll the voters, and if the majority agrees with the voter, then the moderator's ruling will be overturned. Motions to table articles will not be in order unless it is made to table until a specific time and place in today's agenda before the close of the meeting. A motion to reconsider an article after it is closed will not be in order unless there is no other warrant under consideration, example between warrants, and until it is seconded and approved by a simple majority. Reconsidering articles must be discussed and closure reached before the end of this meeting. A motion to restrict reconsideration for any and all previous warrants will not be in order unless there is no other warrant under discussion, example, in between warrants. It must be seconded and approved by a simple majority. Only those people who are on the checklist as qualified voters are permitted to vote at any time. If the moderator receives a complaint or notices a non-voter voting, then I will require the non-voter to leave the gymnasium. As you came into the meeting today, the ballot clerks gave each voter a sheet of yellow yes, no's. These are yours to use if we go for secret ballots. Please do not drop them on the floor or leave them behind after the meeting. When the meeting comes to a close, please either leave them on the table outside or bring them up and put them on the tables up front. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 5 or more voters make a signed written request to the moderator prior to a voice, hand, and/or standing vote on the article. The moderator will conduct a recount of any secret ballot immediately following any vote that yields less than a 10% difference. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 7 or more voters challenge any verbiage, hand, or standing vote immediately after the results are announced, but before any other business has begun. This challenge may come verbally or in writing. Any secret yes/no vote will be collected by the moderator and the assistant moderator, or the clerk, or persons appointed by the moderator prior to the collection of votes. Those votes will be collected down front, handed in by everyone wishing to vote. No person may hand in more than one vote. Any persons needing assistance are to remain seated, and a designee will come to retrieve your vote and any others that need collecting. If that happens, it's going to either be myself, Terry, or Steve that will be collecting those votes, okay? Just so everybody's clear. Approval of all warrant article amendments at deliberative session shall be by simple majority. A vote or hand vote will be a voice vote or hand vote will be the primary methods of voting. If it is not clearly distinguishable by voice, hand voting will be taken. Speakers, as well as voters, please refrain from using acronyms. It is your prerogative to permit non-voters to speak at this meeting. It has been customary to allow employees, council, and non-registered residents to speak at these meetings. If you wish to continue to do so, please signify by saying yes. Yes. Okay. Those that oppose, please say no. The yes has it. Now, let's get into the business part of the meeting. We will start. So Article 1 is the election of officers, which are the open positions for town. As you'll see, they're listed up there. Everybody had to have their names in by yesterday. Let's hope we have good races. Article 2, Zoning Amendment 1. Article 2 is Zoning Amendment 1. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment 1 as proposed by the Planning Board for the Town of Litchfield zoning ordinance as follows? Amends Section 803, Conditional Uses, to permit a mixed-use village development alternative in the Northern Commercial District as a conditional use. This is recommended by the Planning Board as a vote of 4-0-0. To this, we are going to have Chairman Mike Croto of the Planning Board to speak.
I'm going to have our Vice Chair, Mr. Jared O'Connell, to speak to the first zoning amendment, number 1, regarding the mixed-use village development.
Hello, I am Jared O'Connell, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. I've been a resident in Litchfield just about my entire life. So this amendment here is for the Northern Commercial District. So that's not the very north end of town, but basically centered around the north end of Albuquerque. That area is, it's Northern Commercial District, so currently the only residential allowed there is the grandfathered residential, and it has a bunch of commercial uses that are permitted. The problem is that commercial development hasn't been the most viable in Litchfield right now because unfortunately Litchfield is more of a town that people leave to go shopping rather than come to. So this proposal is for mixed-use development. So it allows both residential and commercial in the same development as long as it has certain conditions. So it's a conditional use. And the main thing that matters in this situation is that it like they have to provide a physical impact study that shows that the development is a fiscal positive for the town. So the study will have all the predicted costs associated with the development, like schooling costs, fire, police, all of that, and it has to be a positive. Residential tends to be one that costs the town more because of school services. Commercial tends to have less of an impact on the town, and commercial also has additional value for the town because of that, and is good for taxes, theoretically. So we also restricted the permitted commercial uses in the village development to ones that make sense next to commercial residential uses. So things like contractors' buildings, for example, are not permitted, and like drive-throughs aren't permitted. But like another thing that encouraged this development is the results from the economic development study, which showed that people are in favor of economic development in this town, and especially based on the focus groups, they would prefer like gathering locations like restaurants, coffee shops, and stuff like that. So all of that is permitted in this mixed-use development. And we added some extra requirements like how the commercial and residential usage has to be connected with sidewalks. The residential use part is medium density, so it's 2.5 to 4 residential units per acre. And the way that we encourage commercial, or require commercial usage is for every residential unit, you need at least 100 square feet of commercial square footage. The reason we need that is because we don't want these projects to turn into all residential, which has happened in certain towns like Merrimack, for example, where they have a lot of apartment buildings that went up, which you can't have those big buildings in this because of our design standards. But they ended up with the developers going all in on the apartments because that's what's in demand. And then very little or no commercial got developed, so we have measures in place to prevent that. Anything else you think we should add?
We add ins and
Yeah, the one usage that we propose in this amendment is hotel, or not hotels, but inns and bed and breakfasts, because we felt like it would make sense to allow it. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it would be allowed when it's currently not allowed. Hotels and related services are great for taxes, and realistically, it wouldn't be too big. You can't have too much on a septic system, but it might make sense in that location, especially near Spooky World. Anything else?
Circle, is that written down somewhere that we could look at, those conditions or those things that you'll accept or not accept?
There are a few copies, not a lot, but right on the table out there.
Okay.
It's all in there. Do you want me to have
Do you have a website or that's listed under that we could kind of go and look and see what you just said? More
Yeah,
in depth?
they've been on the planning board portal, but I'm assuming there will also be
I'm
copies.
sure they've been published on the town website.
On the town website? They'll be published on the town website?
I think Kim Kleiner can speak
Is
to that.
that what I heard?
We'll have them on the town website under planning board, also under town meeting Monday morning.
Very good. Thank you.
Every single usage here, except for the inns and bed and breakfasts, are already permitted in that zone. It's a subset of what's already permitted.
Okay,
We
very good.
restrict it to ones that make sense next to residential, because not all of them go well with residential.
Thank you very much.
Question from the woman Sigurd?
location?
So this is basically centered on the very north end of Albuquerque, so it extends probably from around Corning down to Robin Ave, so the entire area at the north end of Albuquerque. The main lots that this development is likely to potentially happen in are across from the sand and gravel and the golf area there. There's that open field that has the white picket fence. And the other location that that is undeveloped right now is next to St. Francis behind those houses there. So those are the two large undeveloped lots that remain. It is possible for another place in this district, it to happen in another part of this district, but a lot of it would need to be redeveloped for that to happen.
So,
Oh, it would be beside St. Francis. Behind St. Francis is conservation land, but beside it. So if you're going down St. Francis Way, and then you turn right into their driveway, to the left is a field that's actually currently listed for sale. So it could get developed. It's an option. Currently, it could be developed into stores or anything that's currently listed in the Northern Commercial District, but this would allow housing to go along with it to make it more commercially viable, because commercial is not very commercially viable in Litchfield, and there's already residential in the area, so it should be compatible.
so has anybody come forward to say, for businesses, hey, we want to build it there?
We've had two developers and one landowner come to us and give feedback on these developments. Rick Charbonneau, for example, wants to eventually develop the land that he has over there. And he would rather a mixed-use village rather than the commercial that's currently provided. At least that's the impression I got. There are certain uses that the uses that are listed in this development our goal was to align more closely with what the town wants in their economic development and the results of the economic development study. So yeah, anything else?
Do I have to state who I am?
Yes, name and
Sue Ann
address,
Poulin,
please.
35 Blackmill Drive, Litchfield. How many acres are in that north commercial district?
What about it?
How many acres are in that northern commercial district?
There are a lot of acres. The development needs at least 5 acres for the village to happen. There are probably 2 lots or lots when combined that exceed 25, 35 acres. So
So you don't know the total, like, is it 50 acres? Is it 100 acres?
there are there are hundreds of acres in that.
I want to say, so Michael Croto, Litchfield Planning Board. I want to say that when it was discussed with the planning board, I think it was a total of 25 acres.
And why the northern and not the northern and the southern, or just the southern?
Well, we start small and see what the town thinks of it. The southern end already has an overlay that allows medium density residential with the multifamily overlay already in a large portion of it. I think this would be more relevant in the southern commercial district or other parts of the southern district if the land that is currently down there where the bridge would have been built gets sold. It will make more sense down there, but we're starting up north.
Thank you.
So, again, Michael Croto, Chair of the Litchfield Planning Board. This only pertains to the Northern Commercial District. It does not pertain to any other parts of the town. Litchfield.
Vina Pettit, 132 Page Road. This is supposed to be mixed use, and I believe you said the minimum commercial component would be 100 square feet. Isn't that like 10 feet by 10 feet?
That's per residential unit. So if
Oh,
you
per
end up with a 35-acre property, let's say you end up with 150 units, which can be various forms. Most likely will be townhouses. So if you have 150 units, that's like 15,000 square feet of commercial, which is probably a pharmacy and a little beauty parlor, or pharmacy and a convenience store. So it's not a lot. It's something that will hopefully fit the needs and character of Litchfield, because you're not going to have a gigantic thing with Home Depot and Hannaford and all that stuff in this part of Litchfield. That's not going to happen. So the goal is something that would work with Litchfield.
Okay, thank you.
Faye Oblinus, 15 Riverview Circle. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. So is there residential use there now?
Only grandfathered.
Only grandfathered, so this is for mixed-use commercial and residential?
With a small exception where the multifamily overlay is, where the townhouses up north that went in, though that's part of the Northern Commercial District, I think, but...
That's considered residential?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's multifamily residential. With that, you don't need any commercial aspect. This helps encourage commercial development because it requires the commercial to go along with the residential, as opposed to just allowing residential. Because if we just allowed residential, we'd have probably a bunch of townhomes and no commercial usage. So this is supposed to have a balance that's good for the town.
That makes it clear. Thank you very much.
Jim McKieran, 5 Woodburn Drive. A few years ago, we had a flood on the golf course area, right where St. Francis is. Is any of that land going to be impacted by a flood of the same character?
Like which golf course area, or which area near the river?
Piscana Way, isn't that the one?
Because the one near Natticook does not apply to this. I don't think most of that is not floodplain next to St. Francis.
Well, that whole area was pretty well flooded about
So
10
this is
years
not
ago.
where the big golf course is. This
Yeah.
is where the field is behind the houses near the end of Albuquerque.
But isn't that a lower elevation?
If you go behind it, you can see that there's like the river, then it goes up, and then it goes up again. There's a big height difference when you go from St. Francis down.
I
So-
would have all that very well in place, because you get residences and they're going to get flooded. You got a big problem on your hands.
Yeah, very little of that is floodplain.
Okay. Okay,
And
thank you.
there are regulations regarding floodplain usage.
Okay.
Looks like it.
Is there any further questions or comments on Article 2 for the zoning amendment? Seeing none, Article 2 will be on the ballot as presented. Now, I just want to poll the audience here. Is everybody doing okay with the volume? Can people hear? Is anybody having trouble hearing? Do we need to move around? Everybody good? Okay. Article 3, zoning amendment number 2. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment 2 as proposed by the Planning Board for the Town of Litchfield zoning ordinance as follows? Amend Section 200 definitions to update the definition of a butter to reflect recent changes to state law. This is recommended by the Planning Board by a vote of 7-0-0, and Chairman Mike Croto is listed to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So this is a pretty easy one. So the legislature in New Hampshire revised the definition of a butter to a radius-based approach for defining properties across streets and streams. So this is now officially in state statute. So what we wanted to do was to align the definition with the statutory law changes. And that was one thing. And also what this does as well, it mandates notifying all tenants of a manufactured housing park if there's an application that comes in before the planning board. So notifications for the planning board meetings, we're basically updating the definition in compliance with the state regulation. to align with the definition of a butter that's outlined in RSA 672:3, and we included as amended language in that, so.
Any questions or comments on Article 3?
Sean Miller, 17 Tacoma Drive. What are the two definitions? What's the currently, what do you want to change it to?
So the state created a definition of a butter that basically would be applied statewide. So all we're doing as the planning board is we're taking that definition and we're applying it to when we have people that come in for site plan applications, when we notify people, we're using that definition for us in terms of a butter.
I understand that, but what's the definition itself?
I believe I do have a copy of that. Hold on. 1 second.
I have it.
Yeah. Thanks.
There are copies over there.
Yeah, there should be copies, you folks. When you came in, you should have received copies of all of the amendments to the zoning regulations. So, what we're doing is we're amending Section 200 definitions to update the definition of a butter to reflect recent changes in state law. The existing section 200.01.1 reads as follows: a butter. Any person whose property adjoins or is directly across the street or stream from the land under consideration by the board, if an abutting property is under condominium or other collective form of ownership, the officers of the collective or association, as defined in RSA 356-B:3, 23, shall receive the formal notification for purpose of receiving testimony only and not for the purpose of notification. The term abutter shall include any person who is able to demonstrate that his land will be directly affected by the proposal under consideration. That's the definition.
Any other questions or comments on zoning Article 2? Seeing none. Article 3, which is zoning amendment number 2, will be on the ballot as presented. Next, we have Article 4, which is zoning amendment number 3. Are you in favor of the adoption of the amendment number 3 as proposed by the Planning Board for the Town of Litchfield zoning ordinance as follows? Amend Section 1900, appeals, to reflect recent changes to state law that describes who may appeal to the Zoning Board of Adjustments. This is recommended by the Planning Board by a vote of 4-0-0. And again, we will have Chairman Mike Croto to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So this is amend Section 1900 regarding appeals to basically, again, reflect the recent change in state law and to amend Section 5.03 in its entirety to address appeals of the Zoning Board of Adjustment concerning any matters within the board's power as set forth in RSA 674:33 that may be taken by any applicant and abutter as defined by the new statute RSA 672:3 or by an officer, department, board, or bureau of the municipality affected by any decision of the administrative officer. The old language only put in language as any person aggrieved from the decision of the code enforcement officer may appeal to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. What this does is this clarifies who may appeal to the zoning board under its authority. And I think it makes it much clearer. It gets rid of the person aggrieved language and identifies the specific classification of persons who may be able to bring an appeal.
Okay, any questions or comments? Seeing none. Zoning amendment number 3, which is Article 4, will be on the ballot as presented. Article 5, zoning amendment number 4. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment 4 as proposed by the Planning Board for the Town of Litchfield Building Code as followed? Replace replace and supplement the building code previously established by the town of Litchfield on September 29, 1984, as amended March of 1986, March of 1988, March of 1990, and March of 1996 in its entirety, and replace it with a new building code that references the state building code pursuant to RSA 155-A. This is recommended by the Planning Board by a vote of 4-0-0. And again, we have Chairman Mike Croto to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So this deals with a clarification that was needed regarding procedures for handling disputes regarding decisions of the building inspector. Currently, there is no formal appeals process for this. This article has actually been vetted by Town Council, has been reviewed by the Board of Selectmen. The New Hampshire Municipal Association identified discrepancies in local building codes across the state. So back around 2021, 2022, the New Hampshire legislature adopted what was called the Uniform State Building Code. It's applicable to all municipalities in New Hampshire. The current building code in Litchfield was referenced as the building under what it's the acronym is BOCA, but it's the Building Official and Code Administrators National Building Code, and that no longer exists. So the proposal is to align the Litchfield Building Code with the state building code, which has been adopted under RSA 155A:10. This would help to simplify language and remove outdated language and clarify enforcement. The building inspector obviously reports to the Board of Selectmen. With respect to appeals, there are 3 options under this. First, you can establish a whoops, did I lose it? Okay. You can establish a local building code board of appeals. You can refer appeals to the ZBA. That is designated in there was a warrant in 1988 that was passed by the town, which gave the ZBA the authority to do that. However, that article, apparently, which was passed by the town, was never codified into the town regulations. And the final process would be a direct appeal to the State Building Code, State Code Building Appeals Board. So right now, in our town, Litchfield, the ZBA remains the designated appeals body unless the case gets forwarded to the State Building Code of Appeals for review. The fee structure remains the same. It has not been changed. It was established by the Board of Selectmen in 2024. Basically, the purpose of this is to get in compliance with the state mandates to update the outdated references and provide a clarity and flexibility to future appeals. The code would take effect upon its passage. And again, this would be under the purview of the zoning board. If the zoning board did not feel it had the authority to make a decision regarding an appeal from the building inspector, then it would automatically go to the state. So that's it.
Okay. So we have an amendment presented to me for this article. Okay. We cannot amend zoning articles. Would you like to question or comment?
I would. This, Laurie Gandia, 3 Chamberlain Drive. It's my opinion as the chair of the zoning board, as planning staff for other municipalities, and as a land use attorney, that the provision of the building code that's asking to be adopted by the voters is in violation of state statute. I've made these concerns known to the town on multiple occasions, and I'll just go through what those are. So I'd recommend people not vote in favor of it, because what it's going to do, it's going to put the Zoning Board of Adjustment in a position where it's going to have to deny jurisdiction of certain things that are placed before it. So currently, what's being proposed is 17.02, unless and until the Building Code of Appeals is constituted in accordance with Article 17.01 above, the Zoning Board of Adjustment shall hear appeals of final decisions issued by the building inspector. That would be fine if the town zoning ordinance allowed that to happen. The zoning board gets its power through enabling legislation from the state, and that is not currently in the town zoning ordinance. RSA 673:1 states that every building code adopted by a local legislative body shall include provisions for the establishment of a position of a building inspector, who shall issue building permits, and for the establishment of a building code of appeals. And that's what I believe the building code is trying to do. And it does say that it's going to establish a building code of appeals. The state statute goes on to say, if no provision is made to establish a separate building code of appeals, the ordinance, which is the zoning ordinance, shall designate the Zoning Board of Adjustment to act as the building code of appeals. Nowhere in the town zoning ordinance is this authority given to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So if the town adopts the current language in the Building Code of Appeals, you're now putting me as the chair of the board and the town and the board members in a position where you're bringing cases towards us where, in my opinion, we don't have the authority through the town zoning or by state statute actually prohibits that from happening to us. So if those cases were to come before the zoning board, that's a really bad position for the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and I, as the chair of the zoning board, would decline jurisdiction over those appeals because we just don't have the authority to do it.
Well, I know this was brought forward by the town administrator, and I know that this had been reviewed by town council. I don't know if the town administrator or town council would want to respond to this. This was brought before us sort of as that it needed to be done in order to fulfill certain requirements to be in compliance with the law. So.
Good afternoon, Kim Kleiner, Town Administrator. So in 1988, there was a vote. There was a vote by the residents of Litchfield. You're the legislative body, and you voted that those appeals go to the zoning board. It was an administrative error, and apparently the zoning ordinance wasn't updated in writing. And that's unfortunate. So a vote of this, in my opinion, will correct that error. And we have included in the language that we gave the planning board the part of the article that speaks to the fact that if the selectmen do not appoint an appeals board, if they don't appoint one, and the selectmen had a meeting where they discussed this in detail, they decided they were not going to do that at this time, it would be the zoning board. If it's the zoning board for some reason, it can always go to the state appeals board. If the zoning board feels that they aren't qualified, if they, for whatever reason, push it to the state. But there was a vote in 1988. The people of the town spoke. I think it's unfortunate that that wasn't codified into the, but I don't think it should allow us to overlook that.
Question?
The 1988 vote provided to amend Section 170 to designate the Litchfield Zoning Board of Adjustment as the Building Code of Appeals as required by, and there's a typo in this, in what was voted on in 1988. But that still does not address the fact that state statute says the ordinance shall designate the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So we had a vote in 1988 that said that's what the town wanted to do. That language in 1988 was faulty because it did not change the zoning ordinance. You can't have the zoning board act unless it's designated in the zoning ordinance. So my question would be, where does the authority for the zoning board to act as the Building Code of Appeals come from?
The language that was given to the planning board for adoption of this created the language to make the zoning board of appeals. So that language is included in this change. So it's going to clean up the whole thing again. Regardless of the 1988 vote, if this is voted, all that language will be created and will be corrected within the zoning ordinance.
But where in the zoning ordinance does it designate the zoning board of adjustment to act as the Building Code of Appeals as required by 673:1?
In the Litchfield, agreed, in the Litchfield zoning ordinance, it does not. This will correct that.
But state statute provides that it has to be designated in the zoning ordinance. And it's not in the zoning ordinance, so I'm just struggling as to how you can have a building code amendment that says that the zoning board's going to act in a certain way when you have state statute that says, yes, you can do that, provided you change the town zoning ordinance. So my question is, where in the town zoning ordinance does it give the zoning board of adjustment the ability to act as the Building Code of Appeals?
So in RSA 673, you're dealing with four parts, right? You're dealing with the appeals board. You're dealing with who is the enforcer of the building code, so the building code inspector. You're dealing with who sets the fees, which is the Board of Selectmen, and you're dealing with who hears the appeals, right? So language was given to the planning board for this amendment that covers all parts of 673 in that language. I realize, I mean, we're gonna go back and forth on this, that it is not in your current zoning. That was an administrative error of whomever was your zoning administrator back in 1988. I can't fix that. But the legislative body of this town can fix it.
And we could, if you decided to amend the zoning ordinance to include that authority. We're amending the building code, not the zoning ordinance, to give the zoning board that authority. So in my opinion, again, this is an error. And I'm not going to mention it anymore because I think we'll just go back and forth. But my opinion is this is an error. It's in violation of state statute. You're putting the zoning board in a horrible position, and you're putting developers, you're putting the community in a horrible position. So I'd ask that the residents of the town vote no on this.
Any other questions or comments on Article 5?
Sue-Ann Poulin again. Why don't we just codify what wasn't done correctly in 1988? Wouldn't that be helpful? I mean, the town voted on it, right?
Well,
It was
correct.
never,
The town did vote to
So-
put the authority in the zoning board of appeals.
so why don't we just fix it? If we voted on it, codify it.
Yeah? Yeah?
If we voted on it.
Jim McKieran, 5 Woodburn Drive. It sounds like it's really not between you folks any longer, it's between the state and the town. What has the state declared needs to be done? And if you get that from the state attorney, then just follow what they say.
So the state has adopted a building code of appeals. That is in effect.
Do you have a letter from the state saying, these are in accordance with our rules and we'll accept it?
Well, I don't have a letter in front of me, but I
that's
know
what
that
you-
it was done.
It's gotta be legal, that's all.
Right, I understand completely.
Faye Oblinus, 15 Riverview Circle. I'd like someone to answer that lady's question. Why, if we voted on it, can it not be now codified?
Well, I think the purpose of this amendment was to essentially do just that. I mean, to give the authority to the zoning board to make that determination.
But it
And
sounds like there's a real question about whether that
well,
can happen.
obviously, there's a question, a legal question going back and forth. Now, we have information based from the town administrator and town council that was provided, and you have information from the zoning board chair. And it is, you know, I say, it's certainly an appropriate question, but
Well, it makes me uncomfortable when the authorities here at large can't answer that question about why we can't codify it and go back and correct what was not done back in '88 or whenever that was. That makes me uncomfortable. So, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just to provide some, Laura Gandia, 3 Chamberlain Drive, just to provide some clarification. It can be fixed. It can be codified. That would require, per 673:1, a change to the zoning Board of Adjustment, to the zoning code that simply would read, the Litchfield Zoning Board of Adjustment is empowered to act as the Building Code of Appeals per RSA 673:1. In the zoning law, if that was done, I would have no issue at all. It's a process thing that, in my opinion, again, it's not being followed.
Hi, Ronald Blinas, 15 River Circle. To your point, could you offer an amendment that would be added to this? Or you can't?
you can't, yeah.
Can we add another article at any point? Okay, final question. What does our attorney say about this question?
Ladies and gentlemen, Attorney Driscoll.
As to your questions, these are all zoning amendments that went through the zoning amendment process. So that all occurred at the planning board. All those hearings, et cetera, occurred. That's when these got formed. So that's why you can't amend them here, unlike your other articles, okay? You also can't add another amendment or another warrant article because it wasn't warned for this proceeding. So there's various deadlines and whatnot that haven't been observed.
Okay, to the point that was raised, though, the lady said, is there, in your opinion, the conflict that she is raising, is that legitimate?
I see the amendment as it's drawn up to delegate that obligation for the zoning board to be the Building Code Board of Appeals locally until one is established as being in this amendment. So I don't think there's that issue. There's this question of this 1988 vote. I'd like to see that before I could really opine on adding it or how that affects it.
So there appears to be no substantive resolution at this point.
Well, again, this ordinance provides that the zoning board would be that. And I believe that that addresses the issue, but I understand that there is a debate on that point.
Question, Fayette Williams, 15 River Circle. Is it possible for the zoning board to withdraw this warrant article at this point?
The planning board?
It's a zoning amendment planning board. In order to correct what happened in 1988, if this is going beyond that, it seems like maybe we should withdraw this at this point. Is it possible for the zoning board to do that? Planning board.
I think,
Yeah, as I was just reassured, that should have actually been brought up at the planning board back during the public hearing in order to move it onto the ballot like this. And it's here today as it is.
So, as a voter, I would urge the citizens of Litchfield to vote no to this until we can get that clarified. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on Article 5?
Vice Chair Mr. O'Connell would like to say something.
Seeing none.
I'll add a comment. I'm the vice chair of the planning board. The article or the proposal here has a lot of important changes to prevent confusion for the average citizen that's reading our building code. The current ones reference out-of-date codes and will cause confusion on what codes apply. We've also put time into making revisions to the proposal to make sure that doesn't go out of date until the state completely changes the building code, because it clarifies that there are a lot of national and international codes that apply as designated by the state.
Okay. Looks like we got two more questions. We should have stopped when we were ahead.
I just wanted to say, I didn't in any way mean to imply that I didn't appreciate all your work. I do appreciate it so very much as a resident. I just feel uncomfortable with going forward if we have this controversy going on. Thank you.
And I just Laura Gandia, 3 Chamberlain Drive, and I just wanted to note that I did raise these concerns to the town administrator on multiple times, and when I was at a planning board meeting, this issue came up, and there was nobody there to speak upon it, so then it wasn't voted on, and I then believe that it was a rush to have a meeting on a Friday for the planning board to do a public hearing to meet the deadlines to put this on the warrant article. So I just want everybody to understand that the process was a little bit rushed, just getting it there based on when I was at that one planning board meeting to talk about it. There was nobody there to speak about it, so it got pushed back because there was a lot of confusion. Then there was another hearing that happened on a Friday evening that I wasn't able to attend, and there may have been another one, but that was how the process played out.
Okay, seeing nobody getting up or coming down, we're going to say that Article 5, Zoning Amendment 4, will be on the ballot as presented. Next, we have Article 6, New Police Department Building. Passage of this article shall override the 10% limitation imposed on this appropriation due to the non-recommendation of the Budget Committee. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,500,000 for the purpose of financing the cost of planning, feasibility analysis, architecture and engineering fees, construction, site work, landscaping, furnishing, and equipping and related costs of a new police department building, as well as to, and to authorize the issuance of $6,500,000 of bonds or notes under and in accordance with compliance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA Chapter 33, and to authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes, and to determine the rate of interest therein, and the maturity and other terms thereof, to authorize the selectmen to apply for, accept, and expend federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project. To authorize the selectmen to use any available impact fees to reduce the amount to be bonded, and to authorize the selectmen to take any other action or to pass any other vote related thereto. 3/5 ballot vote required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is $0.00. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 4-1-0. This is not recommended by the Budget Committee because they have failed to vote on it at this point, so that is 0-0. We have Chief Dan Jones and Selectman John Brunel to speak on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chief Dan Jones, Litchfield Police Department. So the reason, or some of the reasons why we're looking for a new police department include safety concerns within the building, space constraints, and storage restrictions. Included in the safety concerns are a lack of adequate space for such tasks as weapons clearing and cleaning, maintenance, evidence processing, improper ventilation or lack of ventilation while working with carcinogens, evidence storage, improper ventilation again, toxic substances stored in evidence. So whenever we are using chemicals to process evidence or even storing evidence, there should be done in a place where there is a separate ventilation system to clean out the air. in the current building, all of our building is one ventilation system, so the things that are stored, or if we're working with chemicals, those chemicals get sucked into the ventilation system and blown throughout the entire building, which I'm sure you can see the negative in that. The layout designs or dangers include when an officer is processing someone when they've been arrested, they are basically trapped in a small concrete room with no escape route. Easy access to the interior of the facility. Once we bring somebody into the building, unless they're being detained in the holding area, they have access to the entirety of the inside of the building. Most police farms are set up so that everything is blocked off in sections, so that if someone were to break free within the building, they can't get to civilian staff, was really the primary concern there. The Sally Port is not functional as designed and creates a safety risk when we're trying to get someone from a vehicle, someone who's been arrested from a vehicle, into the holding or processing area. And just as an example, if we can't get them secured in a Sally Port, which is basically a garage that we can close in and then move a prisoner from the car to the holding facility, then if we can't close the door behind us, if they break free and run away, obviously there's the risk of running away, but even if they run out and get hit by a car, we own that. It's a major liability for us. And then the lack of any bullet resistant, or I shouldn't say any, there is some bullet resistant glass, but there's very little bullet resistant glass where places where we interact with the community. And so I'll say to that, I know we're in Litchfield, everybody brings up we have no crime here, and that's fantastic. We are very fortunate to live in such a safe place. But in the past month, there was a Bedford officer who was shot and a Nashua officer who was brutally attacked while directing traffic. We have people in this area that are willing to do bad things. And then there are space constraints. Both locker rooms are at capacity. So if we get any more, we'll actually have to find other storage areas for the stuff that is being stored in the female locker room, and we'll have to put male officers, if we hire male officers, into the female locker room and have them share that space. The break room that we use, which is where we eat our meals, is where the officers have to process evidence because we don't have a separate processing area, where we have to clean guns, things like that. Again, all chemicals and things like that, that, not to mention the fact that if we're trying to eat, obviously it's not a great condition for that. There's inadequate office space. Right now we have the sergeants, basically the supervisors, sharing a space with the detective. If we were to utilize our SRO, or once we hire another officer, we'll have another half an SRO. If we utilize them to help the detective in the summer, we don't even have a space for them to sit within the detective's office because it is a shared space. There is only one juvenile and one adult holding cell. One of our holding cells that we used to have is now being used for the AVIS machine, which is a fingerprinting machine to be able to send prints and get instant replies. So in the old days when we used to do fingerprints on paper, we would have to mail them in and wait, weeks or months to get a response. Now it goes right to the state and goes nationwide, and so we can get information back immediately. But that is taking up a holding cell that can no longer be used as a holding cell. Evidence retention and bathroom capacity. So I won't read all of these, but the lack of storage is just ridiculous, for lack of a better term. The building that we have, the operating or operational area of the building is roughly 2,600 square feet. The building that we're going to be asking for, again, interior space, is about 9,400 square feet. So we're going to triple our working area, which will obviously help with the space. We are limited as far as a police impound. If we take a car, we have no place to store that car, no place to process it. So again, just as far as case integrity is not optimal. Our blood evidence, there's been a new law where we have to keep blood evidence on certain crimes forever. And all we have is, I'm sure anybody's been to college, you have the refrigerator that's big, that's what we have for our evidence storage. And even that is not really set up where it should be and as secure as it should be. We have no bulk storage, evidence supplies, all of those things. In 2020, the town contracted with Castle Boo public safety facility planners to look at the different options we had for our building. They included taking over the entirety of Town Hall and having Town Hall move to another location. So then we would remodel the entire police station and Town Hall to use for our purposes. That was determined to be the most expensive option. Obviously, then we'd also have to build another Town Hall, but that was the most expensive option. The next would be to add to the current Town Hall, or I'm sorry, the current police station, but because so much of the concrete block, the portion of the building that we use as our evidence storage and our holding cell and our sally port, none of that is usable as it sits. So that would have to be torn down, and then we'd have to start from scratch. So that's why that is another very expensive option to try to do that. Not to mention the fact that we would have to find temporary housing. The third option was a standalone building, which is obviously the most or not the third most expensive, because at least it's new. You're not having to tear things down and try to work while you're building. But it is more expensive than the last option, which is to complete the public safety complex that was designed before the fire department was built. And even the site work that's been done, I'm assuming everybody knows where the fire department is. There's a grassy piece that sticks out behind the fire department right along the Liberty Way. And that site work, a majority of that site work has already been done. And we would connect to the fire department and be able to share some of the space in there. So we are going to be a little bit smaller than what would be recommended as a standalone building if we were to build one. So as I said, you can see up there, the police station is in blue, and it's right behind where the fire department would be, or is. Just some more design. Any part of the building that shows with the blue trim is the is the police department. There's the basic layout of the police department building. Again, if we can go back to this, if people have specific questions about that, we can go back to it when the time comes. So the estimated project costs include everything that we would need. This would be turnkey. We wouldn't have to come back for anything else. And with about $1 million in contingency, the total project cost would be about $6.5 million. We looked at some other projects that were presented to other towns or other municipalities in the state. And really the one that matters most to us is Atkinson, which is a town of about 7,200, 7,300 people. It's a little bit smaller than Litchfield, has a little bit smaller police department, is a little bit smaller geographically. And they were looking for a $9.4 million building, which actually got voted down. But it is something to give us a comparison for what other towns are looking for. That building is actually the same size as what we would build if we were going to build a standalone station and not share some of the space with the fire department. So when you compare to those other towns, you can see our cost per square foot is cheaper. And some of the reasons for that include the fact that we have that site work done. We are attaching to another building, so we're not starting from scratch. And we're not asking, if you notice that even the Atkinson building was a brick building, was a 2-story building, which means you have ADA requirements. You have to have an elevator and things such as that. So our building is by far the cheapest. If you look at, if you take out the two outliers, would be us and Salem, the average is going to be in the low to mid 700s per square foot. And then just the overall construction cost, not total cost. That first number was total cost, construction cost. Again, we are by far the cheapest. If you look at it, $472 per square foot. So I won't take the time to read that, but we recognize that the town has been very supportive of the police department over the years as far as passing contracts. And we understand that the town has other needs. such as the school, or actually all the schools need work. We understand that. We feel that it is our job to bring this to the voters and let them figure out where to prioritize the police department. But you can't vote on it, you can't talk about it unless we present it to you, so that's why we're here. That's all I have, thank you.
Questions and comments for Article 6. Please come to the mic, state your name and address.
Sean Miller, 17 Tacoma Drive. First, thanks for what you guys do. Second, what are your current memorandums of agreement and understanding with other local or state police departments look like for things such as vehicle storage, evidence storage, and processing?
So we have, I don't know specifically if I have any MOUs or we have any MOUs with other police departments as far as vehicle storage. I'm sure there are certain things we could do or certain times when we could utilize that. The problem with that is, and not that it can't be worked around, but then it's tying up their space, but also now we're having to go back and forth and process it there instead of processing it at our place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Taylor, 6 Lilac Court. This is more around the process of this particular warrant article, and I would encourage that both the Board of Selectmen as well as the school board in the future, if there is not going to be a tax impact in the first year, and you are restricted by the Department of Revenue that you cannot disclose future tax rates on the actual warrant article, please do not put it in front of the voters until you are ready to put something on there as far as spend. So if you want to go ahead and put it into a March 2025, then start to have some expenses in 2025 so that way it does not come across that there is no tax impact. And I appreciate that you're going to put it in the voter guide. However, everyone reads the ballot, not everyone reads the voter guide. Thank you.
Vina Pettit, 132 Page Road. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I appreciate all the work you've put into this and to what you brought to our police department. You've certainly professionalized it, and I want to let you know that what I'm going to say has no reflection on that. My first point is, at this point, this has been put out to the public, but we don't know exactly what it would cost. At the special emergency meeting that was held last Saturday, one selectman did a back-of-the-envelope calculation that the $6.5 million will cost a homeowner of a $500,000 home 53 cents per thousand, which works out to $266 a year for the 15-year term of the bond. Now, that, to me, is a big number, and this town right now has the school board and the School Facilities Improvement Committee working hard to come up with a solution for Griffin Memorial School. One of the problems there is the same that you have, a space problem. Well, at GMS, their space problem is they get kids out in portables for decades now. Decades. I mean, they've got to be approaching the end of the useful life of those portables. I think that what we need here to have here today is our leadership to set the priorities for the town. And while certainly the police department could use a new building, and in a perfect world, if the stars had aligned, we should have made the safety building, the public safety building, both the fire and the police department together back 6 years ago. It would have solved a lot of problems. We seem to keep shooting ourselves in the foot every time we come up with a good project. The project is just right, and then it gets cut down, cut down, cut down. Where I am now is the Budget Committee has to vote on this. I am asking the Budget Committee, please vote to not recommend this project to benefit the town, because that $266 a year that that those $500,000 homeowners are gonna pay is gonna displace the potential for a school building, a school project, or whatever the school board and the Facilities Improvement Committee come up with. It's gonna displace the ability to solve the GMS problem. And I would like to have the police department building put on the back burner and have the budget committee just vote no to recommend this, just not to recommend this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Ronald Blinas, 15 Review Circle. And as was talked about, I'm fully in agreement that something needs to be done at the police station. I've toured the police station twice, met with the chief one-on-one, and appreciated his comments. So what I have to say is not to say that we don't need to do something there. My question and my comments are related to what needs to be done and the process that has got us to where we are today, which I think has been misdirected. So take a step back, and the chief did mention that there was studies done in 2020 to look at options for the police station. And it was done by a firm, Castle Booz, which I'm not sure how we hired them. They're not the same firm that did the fire station, so not that it makes any difference, but they did the work. And that apparently is where the plans come from, the elevations that you saw was there. And they looked at the 4 options. And on the website for the town, and you scroll down to the police, you actually can see those plans that are now located there. The difficulty with the options that they looked at is that they were all based upon looking to duplicate what they had identified as total square footage needed. And that was in the current plan, 10,500 square feet in that addition that's proposed. I really don't think we need anywhere near that amount to fix it. There's about 3,000 square feet now in the police station. I believe if we did something in the order of addition to that of 4,000 square feet, which was completely different than the options that were looked at in 2020, we could address all these items quite conveniently. Using the number from this cost per square foot that the proposal comes in at of $568, that would put us at an amount of around $2.2 million. The problem is something of this scale was never looked at when the options were considered. It was essentially an all or nothing opportunity. So I have reservations that the options to look at were not vetted from a point of view of what can we do in stages as far as money is no object, or can we look at this, do something that makes sense and it actually addresses issues, but comes in at somewhere less than that. The same thing, in my opinion, that it was the problem with the schools, the new school, we have not looked at options. That's what the FIC committee is now looking at, and I think we've found some particular ways that, at least considerations, short of a new build. So the next question comes in the cost estimate itself. I have asked on a number of occasions, you may have seen me on a number of different town meetings, where I asked, where is the estimate developed? The original one that was put forth for the article was at $5.9 million, and through some of my discussions and concerns, it was raised up to 6.5 to add some contingency. But I have actually more substantive concerns related to particularly the total amount. It has not been done by an engineer. The engineer Castle Booz that did the plans have not been utilized to update this. We utilized a construction manager that worked on the town fire station to give us an estimate for the construction of the building, but that doesn't include all the other costs. What's interesting is back on the proposal, there is a price that was created by Castle Booz, the entity that designed the building, done in 2020. This estimate It shows at $8 million in 2020. So my question comes, why didn't we not use Castle Booze to update the estimate they did in 2020 to match the plans that were now being proposed? I don't know where, no one can define where the current estimate came from. It's not an engineer's estimate. It is pieced together by apparently different discussions with different people. It is clearly not the engineer's estimate that was prepared and is on the website of $8 million. Ironically, if you go back, if you remember the slide that the chiefs gave about comparing our cost to other proposals in the area, our current cost, per the slide, is $568 a square foot. If you go back and divide out the 10,500 feet into 8 million, interestingly, that comes in at $765 a square foot.
Excuse me, can I interrupt you really quick?
Yes.
Are you looking for a question to be answered, or are you just looking to give your opinion?
My question will be, is the Board of Selectmen comfortable with moving this forward?
Could we get an answer to that?
And I'd like to just finish my comments if I could, just one thought. Continuing on, if you divide the 8 million by the 10,400, that square footage comes in at $768 a square foot, which is right in line with all the other current proposals in the area, indicating the $8 million is more likely to be the number
All right,
than the
let's see if we
6.5.
have an answer to your question.
You asked a lot of questions, Ron.
Yeah, I know.
First of all, thank you for all your work on this. You've brought up a lot of valid points, and a couple of things. You asked if we thought this was a good number. I think it's a very good number. Working for a company that builds a lot of buildings, I believe these numbers are strong. The estimate that came out in 2020 was during COVID, in which everything skyrocketed. All your material costs skyrocketed. All right, a sheet of plywood went from $40 to $120. Okay, being a stick building, it's going to have the cost is going to be less than that of a steel structure, so you're not going to have a lot of that. You will have some block, but it's not going to be significant. It's going to be built just like the fire station. You know, you and I have had a lot of discussions on this along the way. The thing that I would impart on people right now is that for 22 officers that are housed there now, it is roughly 118 square feet per officer that they're working out of, which is really tough. And when you're cleaning your weapons on the same table that you eat and you're processing evidence, it needs to be done. It was supposed to have been done before. It should have been done before. We waited, and now the cost is a little bit more. But it's only going to get worse, all right? Is there anything else you want?
Okay, actually, out of respect to others, could you just go to the back of the line so the next question can come?
Mr. Moderator, if I could just interject some history for a second. Inject some history. So some folks came up, and I appreciate everybody's feedback, and I'll say, for one, as it says, that GMS is a critical problem for me too. But history goes, when this station was opened up in 1997, the chief indicated at the time it was already inadequate space. In 2002, it became a problem. In 2004, it was another problem. It was brought up in the CIP at that time as a critical problem we had to solve. And over the years, we put little Band-Aids on this building to try to deal with the adequate space issues, especially around storage. In 2018 or so, I believe MRI came and did an initial study and told us the building was inadequate for the police station of our size and for our community. So, you know, to say there was no other studies, there's been plenty of studies. In 2020, we did the study with Castle Booze to get an assessment based on our decision not to do the public safety building, right? The Board of Selectmen at the time made that decision because we didn't think it was economical, the cost was too high at the time. We thought the most critical part of the building was the fire station. In hindsight, I wish it was the complex was built. We wouldn't be having this discussion now, but we are having this discussion. The problem has not been solved. The problem has been a problem for 25 years. We built a building, a new building, that was inadequate at time of construction. And someone made a comment about kicking the tire down, kicking the can down the road all the time. We do that as a town all the time. But at some point in time, after 25 years, we have to fix the problem. We have a site that's prepared for it. We have plans that have been in place. We've had engineers look at it. We've had construction companies look at it. I, as a member of the board, am very comfortable with it. I believe the rest of the board is too. You can hear from them directly also, but I don't know when the right time is. 25 years we've been waiting. 25 years we've been trying to fix this problem, knowing that the community was growing and the department was growing and we needed the resources in that department. So do we wait 5 more years? Does that actually solve the GMS problem? History in this town says probably not, unfortunately. And I wish we could, and I want to see us fix it. But we have to address the town is a separate entity from the school. We do work collaboratively. We've held off. One of the reasons why we held off from the public safety building was because there was things coming in the school that we wanted to have a priority. But we can't keep on waiting. The town has to take care of their employees. And I think a lot of the safety concerns that were raised are really concerns. A lawsuit will cost us a whole lot more money than this building's going to cost us. So that's my speech.
Thank you.
Good, Chris.
Good afternoon, Chris Burns, 4 Center Street. One question I have is that the article states one of the potential funding sources might be impact fees. It's my understanding that impact fees can't be used for to add on or improve existing structures. So where this is connected to the fire station, would they in fact be available? And what's that? It's expansion.
Yeah, it's expansion, yeah.
And do we have an estimate on how much that impact fee is and when it would be expired?
Yeah,
Okay.
currently 48,000.
Thank you.
So Jared O'Connell, 6 Smith Court. So since this would relocate the police department out of the shared town hall building, have any considerations been put into reuse of that space in the town hall? Because I've heard that the non-police department side is getting pretty stuffed.
Yeah, the sad story is the town hall side is just as congested as the police department side. So the town leadership has been looking at the building and how we can reuse it at the lowest cost, meaning reallocating resources, moving some departments on the other side, creating additional storage spaces. One of the things we lack in the town hall is storage. In New England, why there's not a basement is beyond me. But we have no storage. And if you look in the plan, you've been in the planning board, the planning room is consumed with paper and we have no place to put anything else. And we're required to keep it, so we need additional space. So a lot of it will just be storage. But there will be some offsets in offices and stuff like that that'll kind of break up the departments and give them more room.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful for the town. And yeah, hopefully we can utilize these impact fees before they expire, because they are funds, for those that don't know, that are paid by developers when a development happens, and they have to be used a certain amount of time or else they have returned to the developer. So if we want to have that funding source, we will need to do this real soon. Thank you.
Hi, Ronald Blinis, 15 River Circle. The one question I do have is who actually prepared the estimate for this project?
Ekman Construction.
They did the entire engineer's estimate?
They did. I don't understand. If you're asking if they did a full engineer's report, no, that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. They did it based on the fact that they built the fire department, and so they know what it would cost to build basically a duplicate building. They factored in current costs and what they've changed since then, and the fact that we would have some unique parts of our building that the fire department didn't have.
All right, so they developed all line items in this estimate?
They did all the building as far as like IT and furnishings and all that stuff.
Who did the remainder of the estimate?
It depends on what portion you're talking about.
All of it? The remainder, who did it?
Breakdown of the price.
Oh, sure. Oops. You want to go to your slide then? Is that what you're talking about? Which one is this?
There you go.
So anything under hard costs would have been done by Ekman. The contingency was done by Ekman and then by the Board of Selectmen. The civil engineer and geotechnical engineering was done by Ekman. The architecture and engineering fees was done by Ekman. I did double check with another local architecture firm to make sure that those were within the ballpark. I didn't ask for an exact proposal. I just said, are we in the realm here? Obviously, there's no real estate cost. Furnishings to include the records, holdings, and things like that. I got a price from a WB Mason who provides those types of things, just to, again, get a filler for here. If it gets to the point where we go, then I will, or the town will, put out a request for bid. Fitness equipment was a local or a regional fitness equipment vendor. IT was done by the IT director.
My difficulty is, if you go back to the estimate done by Castle Booze, the soft costs here are grossly underestimated from their estimate. There's no engineer that did those soft costs. So I don't have any faith in that, as a for instance.
All right, in the interest of time and respect to others, could you please use one last follow-up question? And then if you have more,
Okay.
please move to the back of the line.
Sure. Who actually came up with the engineering fee estimate of $310,000?
Ekman did it, but as I said, I talked to a local engineering firm and asked them if that was an appropriate number for the design of the building.
And just, I'll note here, and I'll be done. In this estimate, engineering is, sorry, is that, I got glasses, you can't. Sorry. Is 441. Oh, sorry, no, $630,000 compared to 310.
Next question.
Faye Oblinus, 15 Riverview Circle. More a comment than a question, but, and I do want to preface this by saying I do appreciate the police department in our town. I appreciate you, Chief Jones, very much. It seems to me that this project has been rushed, and I have 3 reasons why I think that. One is we've been given an option of new build or nothing. And so I'd like to see, and the same thing happened with GMS, new build or nothing. And so I would like to see options. We saw options presented that Castle Booze came up with in 2020, 5 years ago, but we see nothing with it. No costs, there's no hard information from that, those options that they came up with. So that bothers me. There's no costs for the renovation of Town Hall. So we don't know what that will cost. So we have a new police building that we're building, but we don't have any information, as far as I know, that is going to cost the taxpayers to renovate Town Hall. That has not been presented. So that feels rushed to me. And the third thing that feels rushed to me is that there's no tax impact in that warrant article. You're asking us to vote on a police department. Big project. There's no tax impact. That bothers me. And I understand the reason why. I understand that the DRA says we can't put it in if it's not going to impact 2025. But that feels rushed to me. I would like to see a tax impact. I think the voters deserve it. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
A couple of things. With Mr. Oblinus' question before about whether or not we felt these were, it was good numbers. And then a comment from Ms. Pettit over here. I'll go do you first. You asked about a plan going forward for the town and what we need, our future needs. Right now, this is number one on the CIP, Capital Improvement Committee for the town, okay? This is the number one project for the town, okay? And then going back to Ron, 3 reasons that this is a good, I feel it's a good project. Number one, we have a contingency of over $1 million in this number, okay? Over $1 million in this. It's like $1,070,000, okay? The money that was originally put in, and then you were at the meeting when we added $500,000 to it, because I didn't feel that the original number was good either. It was too short. Secondly, is an oversight committee. It's going to be a building committee made up of some residents, people in town, IT, et cetera, that are going to make sure that this stays on budget, on track, okay? And third, it will be done by competitive bidding. It's not going to be just handed to somebody. Whether it's Ekman or anybody else, it's not guaranteed to go to anybody in particular, okay? We feel like we've done our homework in making sure that this project is going to serve the town and not be, a bad project. I think I have full confidence in this project, 100%, okay? On the voting guide or on the warrants that you see, you'll see a 4-1 vote. My vote was the one vote against. My vote was against the language being added at the last minute to this article by the DRA. They said we had to do it, and that's why I voted no. So it appears that I'm actually opposed to this, but I am not. Now that I find that it means it's a no vote, I am going to ask my board to revote this after, and I will vote in support of it. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
George Ivas, 5 Foxwood Lane. In full disclosure, I work for the police department. And my question is for the chief. And I apologize, Chief, I'm going to surprise you with a question here. I don't know how well that's going to do for me, but when we talk about the building, we talk about the building work as a person working in that building every day. It is obviously broken, but as the evidence officer for the town, in evidence, if people don't know, not only is there evidence of people who have committed crimes that we're using for trials, but there's also evidence storage where people who have had their weapons taken from them due to domestic violence order of protection or something like that. So we have personal property in there. In that area also is drugs. There's a lot of fentanyl in there. So my question is, what, if any, is the liability to the town if there is a fentanyl exposure in that room that gets throughout the building? Because the building is broken, it's been well documented here. And also any and all record storage at the old town hall, if there's ruined records there. Is there a liability to the town because of the building being broken?
So thank you for your question. I'd like to be the first one to welcome you to night shift. So, he's not laughing.
Been there, done that.
So obviously, anytime anybody, whether it's a company, a municipality, whatever, is aware of an issue and doesn't correct it, I would say it opens them up to more liability, and I don't know if the town attorney will have a separate answer from that. But yeah, it is a liability, which again is why I'm standing here. We know it's a big ask, right? But there are liabilities, and we'd rather see us spend money on a new building than spend money on a lawsuit.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Mike Yanuskopich, 20th Century Lane. Thank you for the presentation, Chief. We talk, so I have a comment and then I'll finish with a question. We talk about the details of the specific costs and total costs and that kind of thing. But I think we're kind of missing, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves when we get to that level of detail, because when I look at the proposal, there's a $0 impact in 2025. So I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm just going to say, I can predict what's going to happen, right? The selectmen approved it like 4-1. I think that's what the voting was. There's $0 attached to it. So if I'm a townsperson and I'm not paying attention, I'm going to look, hey, new police department, not going to cost me anything. So my question is, why is there no cost associated with the warrant article?
So the short answer is we'll get money from selling the bonds, but our first payment won't be due until maybe February of 2026. So there's no tax impact in 2025.
Good morning again.
Hello.
So this is the way that the bond bank works, right? So there's twice a year that a municipality can buy a bond. You can do so just a couple weeks ago, and then you can do so in July. And the way that that works is if you buy a bond in July, the first payment isn't due until February of next year. That's not their choice, that's just how the bond bank works. Bonds are only bought and sold twice a year. Unfortunately, that means there's no tax impact in 2025. Sure. The tax impact doesn't occur until 2026. So that certainly we all understand why that creates a concern, the fact that that's not on the warrant. So when the board asked us to put out the spreadsheet with the bond estimate.
It's on the other slide.
Oh, thank you, John. And so if you go to the website, and we will put it in the voter guide, but if you go to the website, you're going to find this information. And there's actually like 8 different options. The Board of Selectmen has to choose. There's not great difference in the choices. There's some vary, and it depends over whether they're paying level debt or they're paying level principal 15, 20, 25 years. And that'll be figured out later when the board gets the final cost from the bond bank when you actually purchase the bond, right? Because the interest rate in July could be different from right now. We wanted voters to be very informed on what the cost would be, but the state sets what we can put on the ballot, not the town. So unfortunately, we can't include it. If there's ways that residents feel that there's other ways for us to get this information out, please let us know. We're willing to put the information out in any way that we can. Unfortunately, the ballot is set by the state.
No, sure, I understand the technicalities, but you can understand the risk that I'm raising here,
Certainly.
right? Because I'm not going to repeat myself, but so I guess the next question would be, if this gets voted through by the town, does that lock us in to this project, even though it says 0?
So if the town votes for the project.
Yes, if this warrant article passes, does this lock us into the project?
Well, certainly, I mean, the Board of Selectmen, there's a lot of the factors there. If something happened and we saw that it didn't look economical in July to purchase a bond, and the selectmen wanted to make some other, decision, I don't think it locks us in the fact of if the interest rates changed drastically. But it does give the town permission to carry forth with the project as it has been presented for the $6.5 million.
Sure. Yeah, and then the only last point I'll make here is it's really one of priority. I'm a big supporter of the schools. I voted for the new school. I understand that was going to be a challenge. It failed. And in response to that, some really invested people in the town joined the Facilities Improvement Committee to start looking at, okay, what are some of the critical things that we can do with the school given that we weren't able to pass it. My fear here is that if this goes through, I'm concerned that the work that the Facilities Improvement Committee has done, because anything that they present is going to cost money. I'm concerned that we will have even less of an opportunity to do some of those and enact some of those recommendations that the Facilities Improvement Committee has done. So in that vein, and I'll just leave with this, I would prefer to see something along those lines being done for the police department, okay? If we can't get a brand new building, what are the most critical things that we can do to ameliorate, you know, the most important drawbacks or challenges with the building? So I would advocate for, I would advocate no on this bill or warrant article, but I'd like to see something along the lines of the Facilities Improvement Committee for the police department. So
Just to Selectman Brunel's point, so I just joined the town in 2022. And certainly this was one of the issues that came to me first. CIP has talked about it for a number of years. It has been the top of the list. There are problems in the town hall building just overall, space-wise, and certainly there are constraints. I have never seen the type of conditions that the police department works under. They are safety concerns and they really need to be addressed, and I understand we can study this. Looking back now, you've had 3 chiefs, 2 administrators, and a whole host of people, construction people, that have looked at this project. I don't think that different conversations or different people are going to bring you different answers. I think you've had very qualified people study this for over 10 years that have all concluded with the same situation, although we are happy to do what the residents ask us to do.
sure, understood. That's all. Again,
Thank you.
thank you for your service.
Next question.
Theo Blinas, 15 Riverview Circle. Back in 2020, Castle Booze did a documented estimate for the build at the police fire station for $8 million. And this one, with a contingency of $1 million, is at, 6.5, is that what it is? What happens if we run out of money? If we have this estimate that is, in my mind, questionable, and I don't mean questionable in a nefarious way, just maybe not substantiated by engineering. If we have this estimate, 6.5 million, and we run out of money, because back in 2020, that was 5 years ago, and I know it was during COVID, but things have, and we have had inflation since then. What happens if we run out of money at that time and we're, halfway into this build, and then you're going to come asking us for more money? I guess I would like an answer to that.
So I'll answer that. The Castle Booze study was for a Cadillac building, and as was the fire department. From what I understand, and I wasn't here, what I understand, the fire department, their first expected cost was much more, and they had to pare it down, and they cut here, cut there, and my understanding is that building was built as I hate to use this term, but as a bare bones building. There's nothing, frilly, there's nothing ornate about it. It's just a basic building. Our building, if you look at our building compared to the other departments that are built, it's a very simple building. It has been pared down, and then part of the process is for, once we hire an architect and once we pick a building manager, and then people from the town will all work together to keep it within budget. So if you're going along and all of a sudden, and one of the big areas where most buildings have an unexpected cost is in the site work. Well, we already have a really good idea of what our site work is because a lot of it's been done. So we're not going to find, we shouldn't find any major surprises there. It should be well within budget there. That's usually the big unexpected cost. And then everything else, if we come along and we say, okay, well, you know, we're $11,000 over, okay, I have to find $11,000 and not get something. And then you just have to cut where you can as you go. You know, if you gave us $20 million, I could promise you we can do it for $20 million, we won't have to cut anything, but nobody's gonna vote for that. And if I say we're gonna do it for $4 million, that's not gonna work. We feel like this is an honest number.
So that's going to be guaranteed by the selectmen? Is that the deal? That's our hard number?
That's-
Okay. And if I could have a follow-up question.
Last follow-up, please.
Thank you. Has there been any work on estimating what Town Hall is going to cost to renovate if this goes through?
Yes, nothing. So they're going to move some of their offices into our offices, and they know the layout. Actually, the town administrator came over and took a pen and a pad and wrote down, okay, this person will go here, this person will go here. And the cells that are a major problem for us because they are no longer in compliance with state law, with protocols and everything else, are not a problem if they're being used for file storage. You can use all of that space for file storage, and we don't even have to change the locks. We just have to give different people access to those areas than have now. I'm not saying that 20 years from now they won't have to do something, or, you know, down the road, but for the foreseeable future, they wouldn't have to change a thing. It would just be a matter of moving a handful of people across the hall.
So $0. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, and
Okay.
the town administrator is nodding yes to that
Okay,
as well.
thank you.
Okay. Seeing no one else at the mic, we got another one. Here she comes, walking down.
Elizabeth McDonald, 46 Natticook. I have a clarifying question. What is the top priority of the CIP committee? Because I've heard here today that it is the new police station.
So
I heard it twice.
I was just shown
Yeah.
the priority, and thank you, I was going to bring this up at
Yep.
the very end. Both are listed as top priorities.
Okay.
So I don't know, it doesn't list them as 1 and 2. They're both just listed as top priorities. So.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted clarification.
Right, no, and I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to bring it up.
Do you have something to add, Mr. Brunel?
No, I was just going to say, Mr. Grotto will probably confirm what we just said.
Okay.
Well, I actually wasn't going to come up, but since the CIP was mentioned, Michael Croto, 6 Garden Drive. I am the chair of the Capital Improvement Committee. This project has been an ongoing discussion since that committee was formed. The two big urgencies was GMS and the police station. Police station, at the time when we first looked at this, said that they would basically step aside because of the urgency for GMS and constructing a new school. And so that's where we were for a while, but now I think the priority, the urgency of this project, I think is essential. And the Capital Improvement Committee basically makes it an urgent priority because of the issues of storage, space, and evidence retention. It's a nightmare to think that this can be happening in our own police department, where we're storing storing evidence in the way that we are. It's a real chain of custody issue, and it's going to become a problem down the road. If we don't do something now, I think we need to do something now. It's only going to get more expensive. I think this is an opportunity to move forward with this, so we do support the urgency. So thank you.
Elizabeth McDonald, 46 Natticook. So what is the top priority? I'm hearing mixed reviews. Those are all of those things you listed, other than the firearms. You deserve everything you asked for, are also priorities of GMS. But I was told they are equal priorities, and you just told me they're not. I don't begrudge anybody. I want everyone to be happy. I get the firearms, and so what is the number one priority? Then you need to fix some of the paperwork that I've been seeing, that it's both priorities. Are they 1 and 2, or are they both 1?
The current CIP plan lists urgency for both the police station and the possibility of a new elementary school. But what I was trying to say earlier was that back when, around 2020, really the school became sort of the urgency priority over the police station, because the former chief at the time decided that he was going to step away and give the school the option to go forward. Obviously, things have changed in that time. Obviously, we've seen a lot of changes that have happened regarding the school. But for this particular plan going forward for the CIP for the 2025-2030, both were listed as urgent.
Sean Miller, 17 Tacoma Drive. All right, so earlier I asked you about memorandums of understanding and agreement. So would a comprehensive memorandum of agreement with state, local, or federal law enforcement solve or potentially temporarily solve the just brought up evidence storage problem? Now, I'm a prior cop, right? I understand evidence processing, storage. I understand the importance of chain of custody. However, if that's what makes it the top priority of the town, would a proper MOU, MOA potentially solve that issue for now, temporarily, while we build funds to build a better police station? Because I agree you do need one, but.
So just to make sure I understand your question completely, you're saying if we had an MOU with a department where we could store evidence there?
Yes, well, so right, an MOU would allow you to store evidence other places, continue chain of custody, because it would be checked in, checked out appropriately. So that gentleman just brought up that is why they bumped this to the top of the priority list over the school, right? Would a proper MOU, MOA then bring it back down to peer level competitive?
So that's, as far as whether or not it would make it equally competitive, I don't know. I mean, to be honest with you, CIP feels that is the priority. My priority is the safety within the building. It's not just evidence storage. If we were to bring some evidence to, if another agency was willing to take some of our evidence, again, it just comes down to, it becomes a logistical nightmare depending on how far they are. If it's just a matter of taking our oldest evidence that just has to be stored forever, we could probably do that. But it's more than just that. It's the evidence processing and lack of an area, and the fact that officers have to have access to the armory to put evidence into temporary storage so that the evidence custodian can take it, who then has to take the storage out of the armory, which not every officer should just have open access to that room, but we have no choice there. Then they have to take it out, processes it on the break room table, and then walk through the detention center where we hold the people being processed or being held. They have to walk the evidence through that room, even if somebody's being arrested, if something has to get while it's being done. And then there's the ventilation issue also. So to me, the fact that the actual space in the evidence room is not my major concern, and I understand, I would say overall space is, because we have record space. We're sharing spaces. Every room has many of the rooms have multiple uses, which are in conflict with each other. That is the size issue for me. It's not necessarily just evidence storage.
Okay. Follow-up, and I apologize for this one, but so one of your officers mentioned large quantities of fentanyl, right? So my question, you brought up evidence processing. So aside from like cyanoacrylate fuming in order to do possible fingerprint collection and NIT kits in order to determine whether it is drugs or is not drugs or what type of drugs, specifically what evidence processing are you doing that would negate a separate facility? I do understand that you would need, HVAC would have to be specific for a proper evidence room. I get that, and I don't disagree. Again, I do think you need a new department, but to where it negates the kids needing a better school. That's my question.
Right, yeah, and again, that's why I'm bringing this to the voters. I can't weigh that against what the school needs are. Okay. The school brings forth what they feel they need. I'm bringing forth what I feel the officers need. And again, save the town from liability, but it's up to the voters to weigh those two. That's not my job.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I just want to say, we have been on this article for over an hour, okay? So I don't want to diminish the importance of it, but let's please stay in the subject of the article. We don't need to go into the details of all what made it. Let's ask the questions we need on the article that can make you feel ready to vote.
Thank you. Fail Blinis 15 Review Circle. According to the CIP, Mr. Proto, did I get that right? I'm sorry. There are two urgent issues, schools and police department. According to the FIC, the school amount over the next 20 years is going to be $28 million. This is $6.5 million over 20 years. We're still paying for LMS. We're still paying for the fire station. I'd like to know what the tax impact is going to look like for a $500,000 home on that. And no one has, I haven't heard that from anybody, but I would like to know.
It's right up front.
Yeah.
So for 2026, if the board hasn't decided which way they're going to go, they are looking at level principle, so that's why we put this up here. I know the discussion is short-term, not long-term. So in 2026, for a $500,000 home, the tax impact would be $291 and change.
Okay, and so we would have to, as taxpayers, figure out on our own, you know, the 28 million added on top of that for 20 years, I guess. That's my point, and we have to think about that as taxpayers. I feel like this project has been rushed, and unfortunately, I would have to ask the voters to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Just for anybody who wants to follow along and learn more about the police station and the proposal, it is on the town website. You can go to litchfield.nh.gov, select the police department, and then there you'll see a section that's just dedicated to the station. So all new information, everything we have will be put up there for review.
Okay. Seeing that we've exhausted every possible answer and question to this one, we're going to say that this will be moved to the ballot as presented. We now have Article 7, the operating budget. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate an operating budget not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth in the budget posted with the warrant as amended by the vote of the first session, for the purpose set forth therein totaling $8,287,429. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $8,160,158, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous actions of the town of Litchfield or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013 X and XVI to take up an issue of revised operating budget. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is 17 cents. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a 5-0-0 vote. This is recommended by the Budget Committee 7-1-0. To speak on this is Budget Committee Chair John David Sun.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to take a few minutes and walk you through the process in which this budget was developed. A lot of this information was shared at our budget hearing a couple of weeks ago. This process started in August with the Board of Selectmen and their work with the various department heads. They received that budget from the department heads, and that proposed budget was $8,648,939. That budget represented an 8.55% increase and put the town $364,347 over the tax cap. During the budget process, the budget was increased by an additional $41,709 to accommodate hydrant increases as well as some insurance changes that came in from Primex. This brought the total proposed budget to $8,690,348. In September, the Board of Selectmen met and made reductions to the town budget, totaling $27,814.45. Those reductions came from the following: fire per diem additional hours for $19,136, solid waste for $2,994.45, and from police for $5,684. After the Board of Selectmen made those reductions, we set $336,532.55 over the tax cap. Additional reductions were made by the Board of Selectmen in October, totaling $141,233.55. That included the removal of 2 police cruisers from the budget. Overall reductions made by the Board of Selectmen during their review process totaled $197,052 and left the budget over the tax cap by $167,295. The budget review process then moved to town reviews on October 3rd and October 10th. During this part of the process, various department heads came in and presented their budgets. Budget committee members had opportunities to ask questions to better understand what was being asked. The final budget that was delivered to the budget committee was $8,493,596. At that time, the budget committee then began voting on the town budget during our October 17th and October 24th budget committee meetings. Actions taken during those meetings included a reduction to police administration by $68,903, fire additional per diem hours, $47,840, fire impact fees towards debt, $40,000, general government gasoline, $6,635, and then Parks and Rec for $5,312. The Budget Committee also reduced various budget line items for a total of $13,464, and total Budget Committee reductions were $206,167. The total revised town budget at that time was $8,287,429, which is a 4.22% increase over last year's budget. You can see where the town budget is currently at that $8,287,429, 4.22% over the approved budget, and currently sets $44,562 under the tax cap. The chart that you see up here on the screen represents all of the warrant articles that we'll go through here shortly. The ones here that say tax impact show the total at the bottom of those warrant articles, if passed, what that tax impact would be. Right next to that are warrant articles that have no tax impact for 2025. That would include those that would come from the unassigned fund balance, or like we just discussed with the police station, don't actually have a tax impact for 2025, but may down the road. The next part of our process included the budget hearing, which was held on January 16th. As a part of that, and the reason we keep mentioning the tax cap is that the Budget Committee is legally obligated to present an operating budget at that budget hearing and today that is below the tax cap. We can only recommend to pass warrant articles that, combined with the operating budget, do not exceed the tax cap. Today at Town Deliberative, if a warrant article with appropriations is amended at Town Deliberative, the committee will revote their recommendation of the article after today's deliberative session. An operating budget that is amended at deliberative is no longer the Budget Committee's presented budget. The committee will revote their recommendation of the article, and in that case, we may vote to recommend an article, may vote to recommend the amended article regardless of the tax cap. So any amendments that come from the floor today that change the Budget Committee does have an opportunity to revote those articles, and then we are no longer obligated to stay under that tax cap. With that, I'll take any questions or comments as it pertains to the town budget.
Almost got away with it.
Yes, sir.
All right, Ronald Blaine, 15 River Circle. Question, what is the tax cap limit?
It's 5%.
5%, okay, thank you.
And that was a warrant article that was done last year. It used to be a flat $175,000.
And that got amended last year?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go back to the slide that had the breakdown of the warrant? Yes, thank you. And one of the things I want to speak to is the total number for no tax impact is $393,256.
Correct.
One of the things that I want to bring up and ask is those represent, if I understand correctly, they will be paid out of unassigned fund balance. Unassigned fund balance, if I just want to be sure I'm correct, is monies at the end of the tax year that has been collected but have been underspent in some categories, so they go into what's called unassigned.
That is correct.
That is correct, okay. So, on the town side, and this is just a point of clarification, there is a requirement to maintain a certain amount of unassigned fund balance in order to have a cash flow to pay for obligations throughout the year.
Yes, that number is between 8 and 12%, and currently we are at 11.23%.
And the 8 to 12 is a recommended range, is that correct?
It's a Board of Selectmen policy that they have, yes.
Okay. My question to the Board of Selectmen is that apparently we are comfortable spending $400,000 out of the unassigned balance. So therefore, that indicates to me that we have enough unassigned fund balance if this was approved for $400,000 to cover our payments during the year. So my question to the Board of Selectmen then is if any of these warrant articles that are unassigned are not approved, will you return that amount to the taxpayers as a credit?
Bob or Kim, who wants to answer this one?
It's always been my personal view that any extra monies should always go back to the taxpayers, even if you wrote every citizen in the town a check for $1. But I guess the proper way for me to put it, the politically correct way, would be that I've been schooled that that's not the way to do it, because it creates an artificial deflation in the balance, which you have to make up the next year.
Well, I disagree with that assessment on the premise, and again, I'll get back to this question. You're the one that sets the amount that you need to have for unassigned, correct?
Well, it's done by the state. The state recommends a range, and we stay in it.
And that's my point, is you apparently have said or have determined that it's okay to take $400,000 out of unassigned if all these get approved.
Yes, because the unassigned fund balance is very healthy right now.
Okay, so if those all got voted no, are you willing to return $393,000 and $256 to the taxpayers?
If I had my way, yes.
What about the rest of the selectmen?
But again, that will create an artificially reduced budget, which will have to be made up next year. Some of this money is from unfilled positions, like we have 2 police openings, but they're currently being hired, so that money's going to have to be there.
Well,
so it creates a good opportunity for us to buy some things that we otherwise couldn't, like a couple of police cruisers.
You can't look at it that way. It is money either, in my opinion, you look at that money, that is either you determine it's available to be spent or it should be returned.
I don't disagree with that philosophy.
And
but
that's how I do it.
It's the way that it's always been. It was that way when I got here, and I don't foresee it
And again,
changing.
I would like to poll the rest of the Board of Selectmen to that question.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So if there was to be an action by the Board of Selectmen, that would create a lot of work for, first of all, we would need to supply them information on what would happen to the tax rate, which hasn't been presented to them. So I don't feel that it's fair for them to answer uninformed. And it would require a vote by the selectmen. So in all fairness to the selectmen, I don't think they are prepared to answer that question today because they haven't been presented that information from the administration.
Well, I can figure out what the tax rate reduction would be pretty easy, just.
No, quite frankly, sir, it's also information that we receive from the DRA in September when there's a tax rate setting process. So when that process starts, we receive information from the state on various grants that may change, revenues that have changed. So until that tax rate setting happens in September, the board would not have all the information they need to make that decision.
All right, I'll just finish up by saying it's very deceptive. And the reason I bring it up is I've seen these zero tax impacts on the voter before, and not knowing the specifics of the process, my interpretation of it, no zero impact, is coming from grants or some other process. And that's not true. It is essentially tax that I won't get credited back if we spend the money.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Article 7 will be on the ballot as presented. Next, we have Article 8, Human Services and Health Agencies. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,450 to support human services and health agencies providing services to the town of Litchfield? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, and no amount is to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote is required. The estimated 2025 tax impact is 0. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 500, and it was recommended by the Budget Committee, 800. To speak on this will be Chairman of the Selectmen, Robert Leary.
Okay. Yeah, this is one we do every year. It's the local welfare organizations that seek money from the town to provide services for residents of the town. The money goes directly to the people in this town. It's not spent somewhere else. Things like American Red Cross, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Bridges, CASA, and Family Promise. They provide a lot of services to people who are in need in the town, and that's why we fund this every year.
Questions or comments? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Article 8 will be on the ballot as presented. Article 9, Property Reevaluation Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $25,000 to be placed in the Property Reevaluation Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is 0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 410. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 800. To speak on this, we have Selectman Kimberly Queenan.
Let's see. The Constitution and statutes of the state of New Hampshire require that property subject to a tax based on value be revalued at least every 5 years. The purpose of this article is to maintain true property values. The next property revaluation is this coming year in 2025. The cost for the 2025 property revaluation is approximately $86,328 for residential and commercial properties. I'm going to skip ahead one line. In addition, an additional appraiser has also been hired for specialty utility properties costing $15,000. The service we used to do the appraisals used to do all three. They would do the residential, commercial, and utility. The person who did the utility left the company, so we had to go out and get a different vendor for that. The total of the $86,328 and the $15,000 is $101,328. The December 2024 property revaluation expendable trust fund balance is currently $104,434.52. Level fund cost over 4 years will avoid property tax spike. So what this means is we present this article every year. We ask the voters to see if they want to put in $25,000 a year from the unassigned funds, so that every 4 years when the reevaluation is due, we already have the money ready, the $100,000 saved, to avoid a tax spike of having to raise all $100,000 in 1 year.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Article 9 will be moved to the ballot as presented. Next, we have Article 10, Ambulance Revolving Fund. shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in the ambulance revolving fund as previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is 0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 500. Not recommended by the Budget Committee, 800. On this, we have Selectman Kevin Lynch to speak.
Hi. I hope you're all warm. This is a simple one. Each year we have this, the ambulance calls funding for a contractor with Hudson. They in turn bill us if they don't pay. Those people, we have to pay something, and that's how it works. As you see, there's no tax impact. There has been some people have not paid. Goes on for, I can't read that too well. It's too big. Okay, the beginning of the balance of the year was $9,990.10. The balance of the revolving fund as of December 31st was $24 is $2,139.63. The total invoices paid were $20,000 and $20,000, in which $10,000 was refunded directly from the town's operating budget. Okay? What it is that the town shall pay for the raise and appropriate, and we're paying to raise the appropriate $20,000 to be placed in the General Assistance Expendable Trust Fund, as previously done. This sum is to come from an unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised per tax for any new taxes. And this was approved by the Selectmen, 5, and it's also approved by the Budget Committee. So there's no tax impact at all for this year.
Okay, just for a clarification,
I apologize.
there was a typo in the presentation here. The meeting minutes reflected that the Budget Committee did vote in favor of this by a vote of 800. I read it as not recommend, so just to be clear, it is recommended by the Budget Committee. Okay, so now we'll open the floor to questions and comments.
This is to pay for your ride in. That basically I'm referring to.
Seeing none.
Okay.
Article 10 will be moved to the ballot as presented. Next, we have Article 11, General Assistance Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $20,000 to be placed in the General Assistance Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is 0. And this is recommended by the Selectmen by a vote of 500, and it's recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 900. To speak on this, we have our Town Administrator, Ms. Kimberly Kleiner.
So good afternoon. So there's a state statute 165. This states the law that's required by all New Hampshire municipalities. So whenever a person in any town becomes poor, is unable to support themselves, there's a process that they have to go through. They have to prove to their municipality their income, their expenses, things of that sort. You can find that application on the town website and you can also find a whole set of rules and administrative information that is required. So if anyone's interested in the process that residents would have to go through to apply for this money, you can find that on the website under Department's Welfare. So one of the reasons why there's been a large uptick, and I'll move to the next slide here. You can see from 2022 to 2023 to 2024, there's been a large increase in the amount of support that has been requested by the town. And there's a reason for some of that. Some of it is the amount of housing options within the town, and some is just changes in the markets that we are seeing across. So if you look at the surrounding towns, most of the towns have exceeded their welfare budget. This is not anything new to Litchfield. And we, as welfare officers in the state of New Hampshire, we are talking about this and talking with legislators about this on how we address this going forward. But another driver of it was in 2023, Governor Sununu passed Senate Bill 110, which basically says that if a resident from Litchfield or any municipality goes to another municipality to receive aid, so this is just an example, a Litchfield resident goes to Nashua or Hudson or Merrimack, that municipality has the right to bill the town of Litchfield back. So quite often what was happening were people were becoming unhoused or having problems with housing in our smaller towns and going to larger municipalities who have shelter services available, right? So the town of Litchfield and most smaller towns don't have shelter spaces available. Those municipalities now have the option under this bill to bill us back for those services they are providing our residents. So that's some of it. We have been working very hard. I think everyone knows it's been a difficult economic climate, and we are trying very hard to help our residents. And so the selectmen did approve to vote to put money into the fund to offset some of these charges should this continue into 2025. And this amount will come from unassigned fund balance. Again, it will go into the trust, and it will only be used should the situation come where there are residents that fit the application process. And it is a process, and everything is validated through the administration.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, Article 11 will be on the ballot as presented. We now have Article 12, Public Works Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $30,000 to be placed in the Public Works Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance with no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority votes required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is 0. Recommended by the budget of the Board of Selectmen, 500. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 900. To speak on this, we have Selectman John Brunel.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So this balance currently has $19,972.51 as of the end of last year. These funds are used to help pay for solid waste disposal and excess fees that were not part of the annual budgets, anything overages. Replacement of capital equipment at the solid waste with the large value items like a skid steer or some of the heavy equipment they have there. It also helps us cover any overages in our snow removal budget. If we budget money, and if it goes over because we have an excessive snow year, this helps cover those expenses. The funds also can be used for repair and to be able to acquire new equipment as needed as we do our replacement schedule. We have a target to have about $100,000 in this fund. And I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, Article 12 will be moved to the ballot as presented. Now, just for a point of clarity, Article 13 and 14 are the same. They're for two separate items, same thing, but just to be clear, all the dialogue will be the same for both, but I will read them separately. Article 13, replacement of one police cruiser. To raise and appropriate the sum of $68,903 to purchase and equip one new pursuit-rated police model cruiser with said funds to come from unassigned fund balance. Selection of the purchase to be said vehicle to be the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen in their discretion. If determined to be necessary and in the best interest of the town, purchase of said vehicle to be competitive bidding. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is $0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 500. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 900. To speak on this, we have Chief Dan Jones and Captain Tessier.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you all sincerely for taking the time from busy schedules to join us here today. We recognize that such occasions can be lengthy and demanding, and we deeply appreciate your unwavering support throughout the years. Your commitment and partnership mean a great deal to us, and we are truly grateful for your continued support. So I'd just like to take a few minutes to talk about the police cars and why we're hoping to get a couple more cars. As many of you know and have driven down 3A, a lot of our cars are sitting at Edwards, and they spend some lengthy time there. So we have 11 total vehicles, 5 patrol cruisers, 1 patrol supervisor car, 2 detail cars, 3 administrative cars. Most of the cruisers in surrounding towns, neighborhoods, everywhere else have a lifespan of between 80 and 100,000 miles. Our average frontline cruiser right now has about 90,000 miles. If we remove the supervisor's car from that, this changes that drastically, and the highest cruiser that we have right now in operation as a frontline vehicle has 140,000 miles on it. Under the old budget plan, 8 cruisers would have been purchased between 2020 and 2024. We've actually only purchased 2. So as you can see, I mean, there's lots of impacts. Everybody knows the impacts of high mileage vehicles. Our vehicle mileage has about the equivalent of double that of a personal vehicle, with the run time, the idle time, just the excessive downtime due to warranty claims, parts, repairs, time spent scheduling us to bring cars to places for those repairs. You can see the higher maintenance costs that we've spent and just the unavailability of patrol vehicles.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Article 13 will be on the ballot as presented. Now we will do Article 14, replacement of 1 police cruiser. To raise and appropriate the sum of $68,903 to purchase and equip 1 new pursuit-rated police model cruiser with said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance. Selection and purchase of said vehicle to be the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen in their discretion. If determined to be necessary and in the best interest of the town, purchase of said vehicle is to be by competitive bid. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is $0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 500. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 810. Again, on this one, we have Chief Jones and Captain Tessier, which they can say ditto.
Ditto.
Any questions or comments on this one?
Question is, are we just buying 2 police cruisers in these warrant articles? There's none others anywhere else in the budget?
There's 1 in the budget.
Oh, so the operating budget has 1 in it. So if these get approved, there'll be 3 new ones. Is that correct?
Yes, and even just for clarity, even if we get all 3 cars, we're still going to have 1 car, as of today, 1 car that'll have over 100,000 miles.
Okay.
Next question. Be careful.
George Ivis, 5 Foxwood Lane, and currently assigned to night shift, I guess. One of my duties at the police department, I'm the SRO, and so that means I'm in the school Monday through Friday. And just as a comment, it wasn't more than a couple days ago that due to the lack of functioning cruisers, I had to take the detail car to the school. Now, if you know anything about a frontline cruiser, not only is it pursuit rated to be able to get to calls fast, but it also contains a lot of equipment that are necessary to do our job effectively. Patrol rifles, ballistic vests, med kits, evidence recovery kits, that kind of stuff. So when in my job as an SRO to get to the school, I had to basically re-outfit a detail cruiser to make sure I could effectively perform my duties that day and protect the school. So, and there is no worse feeling in the world as a first responder than trying to get to an emergency call when you break down on the way to that call, which has happened to me. So the cruiser that I usually take has 140,000 miles, and there are more than that in the fleet, and we desperately need all three of these vehicles. My comment.
Welcome back to day shift. So we did have an incident where we were actually short 2 cars. I had 2 more officers come into work one day than I had cars available. So we literally had to double people up or just not give them a car, which obviously is not ideal. When you call 911, you hope that we respond, and we don't have enough cars for people. That's not a good thing.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Article 14 will be on the ballot as presented. Next, we have Article 15, Cemetery Expendable Trust. To see if the town will vote to establish a cemetery maintenance expendable trust fund pursuant to RSA 3119A and RSA 289-2A, allowing future proceeds received from the sale of cemetery lots in the town of Litchfield cemeteries and any interest gained thereon for the maintenance of cemeteries, and to raise and appropriate $5,000 to be put in the fund, with this amount coming from the unassigned fund balance. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. Recommendations required. Majority vote required. Estimated 2025 tax impact $0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500, and this one is not recommended by the Budget Committee because they have not yet voted on it. For this, it looks like we have Selectman Leary to speak.
Yeah, this is, in years past, there used to be cemetery commissions when if somebody wanted to buy plots or lots in the cemeteries, you would write a check to the commissions. Well, a few years ago, the state mandated that the town owns the cemeteries now. So people would be writing the checks to the towns and it just end up in the general fund. So what this does is it creates an expendable trust fund so that this money from purchasing lots and plots goes in there and it's used for the repairs of headstones. If a tree falls in the cemetery, we can send somebody in to clean it up, the fence, things like that. And it just kind of cleans up an area that was kind of messy in this thing.
Any questions or comments?
Also, the Budget Committee had voted in favor but needs to revote this article due to a language change, so we'll be doing that after.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, Article 15 will be moved to the ballot as presented. Article 16, ratification of lease agreement between the Board of Selectmen and Cellco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless. Shall the town of Litchfield vote pursuant to RSA 4111A to ratify a lease agreement between the Board of Selectmen and Cellco Partnership, according to which Verizon Wireless will be leasing a portion of the property, approximately 1,200 square feet, located at 8 Colonial Drive, Litchfield, New Hampshire, Lot 57 on map 16, for a cell phone tower. The initial term of the lease shall be 5 years, and it may be extended for 4 additional 5-year terms, total of 25 years. Rental payments during the first year of the lease shall be $30,000 and thereafter increase by 2% annually. Copies of the full text of the lease agreement are available at the town clerk's office. Majority vote is required. No tax impact to the town, recommended by the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to assume that's 500. And recommended, this is not recommended by the Budget Committee yet. I take it they haven't voted.
I believe they're actually not going to vote on it. There's no tax impact.
Okay. To speak on this is Selectman John Brunel.
Well, afternoon. It's been a long day. Hopefully this is a good article you all can support. So what we're trying to do for the last 5.5+ years, so I've been working with different carriers to try to improve overall wireless carrier services in town. As everybody knows, we have a lot of spots in town where we don't even get good signal. And this actually impacts public safety in general because we do leverage Verizon for a lot of our backhaul traffic. So after about 5.5 years or plus, Verizon approached us, which is their Celco, which is their construction company, looking for a place to put a tower in town. Well, if anybody knows about this town, we're pretty flat and in a gully, right? There's not a lot of high spots. But luckily for us, we just constructed a public safety system up on Rocky Hill. Now, Rocky Hill, if anybody doesn't know by that name, if they know, there's a Pennachuck water tower up there. It's right off of Colonial Drive. Right? That's one of the highest spots we have in town. It's about 355 feet above sea level. Right? That's the highest spot. So what they're going to do is they're going to come in and they're going to build a communications tower and facilities that will house their equipment. Celco, which is the construction company, their first provider will be Verizon Wireless. If you know anything about cell towers, once a cell tower goes up, other providers will go on there. And we anticipate the 2 other major carriers will come on. And most of the other carriers are what they call MVOs, and they ride on those networks. So this project would hopefully resolve a lot of communications in the town. This is just an elevation view. As I said, if you look at the elevation view of Litchfield, there's one little spot that shows as a high spot. That's Rocky Hill, town-owned property. Today, as I said earlier, there is a Pennachuck water tank there that we lease land to, or I think that's, I forget what it is, but we gave them property to use. In addition, we built our public safety tower 5 years ago alongside it off to the left of this picture where the red box is. Celco will come in and construct their equipment right around our stuff. And when they finish their construction, our intent is to migrate our stuff off of our tower onto their tower and then remove our tower out of service. So, like I said, I've been working with these providers for the last 5 years in my capacity as the IT director. Rocky Hill, like I said, is the highest part in the town. And it's the same, like I said, it's the same place that we have our town public safety system in there that was put in 5 years ago to improve emergency communications, and I think all departments will tell you that it's been a vast improvement. The town will transition from our tower that we're on there after construction. One of the things in this agreement is we are concerned that in, say, 25 years, if they want to sell the tower or give it to another provider, the town would have the right to acquire it and maintain it going forward. This will significantly improve wireless services in this town. That will open up also wireless internet service providers to the home to get you off of the evil Comcast or whoever else you may have. This tower, if you've ever driven up in that area or driving around, you don't even see the water tower. Most people don't even know that our tower is there. You won't see it from the roads. That's why we picked this location. It's one of the reasons why the water tank went up there also. So it won't be visible to the residents. Again, you'll benefit from the services being improved. The lease is still in the draft mode lease, which obviously after you approve it will become effective. It is available for review at the town hall. Feel free to go look at it. Like I said, it's good for us because they're paying us to use the property. We get to benefit from all that. And I don't know about anybody else, but I could use $30,000 in revenue into this town. So it's a great service. I'll take any questions if anybody has anything.
Questions or comments?
Vina Pettit, 132 Page Road. Is the 2% fixed for the whole term of up to 25 years or whatever it is?
Yeah, it's 25 years.
So regardless of interest rates or inflation, it's just going to be 2% fixed?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But that's somewhat standard too in most contracts like this.
Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, Article 16 will be on the ballot as presented. Article 17, supplemental fire coverage. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $41,540 to supplement the fire department's budget to allow for increase in coverage as necessary to protect the safety and welfare of residents of Litchfield. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax impact is 3 cents. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. This is not recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 6-2-0.
Mr. Moderator, just a point of clarification. It actually is recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 6-2-0, so that not should not be there.
Okay, for clarification, mark that as a recommendation by the Budget Committee by a 6-2-0 vote. And to speak on this, we have Fire Chief Doug Nichols.
Good afternoon. So just to start out, we've had 2 full-time firefighters in Litchfield working 8 to 4 Monday through Friday since 1986. Since 1986, it has never changed. And our call volume has grown through the roof through all those many years. So currently we have 2 firefighter paramedics who work 8 to 4 Monday through Friday. And again, we have all these new, not new calls, but all our calls are becoming more and more labor intensive. You have car accidents, you have people that are experiencing medical emergencies that 2 people aren't enough. So I can have 2 paramedics working on shift, and if they go to somebody who's in cardiac arrest, they have to do basic CPR. Instead of, if there was a 3rd person or a 4th person there, then they would be able to actually use their paramedic skills, and you would have a much better outcome. Currently, last year, the full-time, 2 full-time firefighters did 359 calls, which is a 40% increase. The department overall did 901 calls. About 10 years ago, we were doing about 600 calls a year. So, and just to put it even more into perspective, back in 1986, when we started with 2 full-time firefighters, the entire fire department was doing just a little over 200 calls a year. So the other issue that we're having is we're experiencing what they call back-to-back or simultaneous calls. So literally, we'll get a dispatch for a fire alarm activation, and by law, we have to go to whatever is dispatched first. So there's a fire alarm activation, say up on Route 102, the 2 full-time guys leave. 5 minutes later, there's a car accident with people trapped, and now you have nobody that's able to go to that call. We used to have all our callmen that lived either in, that worked in town or worked close by, that could leave and come back, and we're not getting that anymore. I work a couple days a week during the day, and then we have another deputy chief that's around. So sometimes we have a 3rd person, but it's not guaranteed. So if we get a fire, we had an influx of brush fires this year, where we were very manpower dependent. We can call for mutual aid, but the problem that we have is when you call for mutual aid, all the towns around us, Londonderry and Hudson, are experiencing spikes in calls, and a lot of times all of their people are out. And we're actually doing more mutual aid. We've already done 2 mutual aid calls in the last 2 days to Goffstown and to Londonderry because their people are tied up on other calls and aren't able to go to their fires. So again, we're looking for extra money for what we call per diem coverage during the day. What a per diem firefighter is a per diem firefighter is full-time on another department. They have all the full-time skills and specialty training, and I can bring them back in and help them cover our calls. Currently, we've been doing third man coverage for the last 20 years. And what we do is if we have a snowstorm, we'll bring an extra person in. If we have a meeting that we know that's going on that the full-time captain has to attend, we'll bring a third person in. But what we're looking to be able to do is when we have a big influx in these calls or these calls happening at the same time, be able to have the ability to bring another person in to help us with the calls. The other big thing that we're having now too is where we have 2 paramedics. The town of Hudson has had a high turnover rate, and all the people they're hiring now, before they had paramedics on every ambulance, now they have a lot of what they call basic EMTs that don't have the paramedic skills. So what we're finding is during the daytime, our paramedic is going with our resident to go to the hospital to give them the extra level of care that they need. So we're at the point, like I said, where we need this extra coverage, and if approved, it'll allow us to provide the best coverage that we can to the town. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Article 17 will be on the ballot as presented. Article 18, additional assistant librarian hours. Shall the town vote to increase the annual hours of the children's assistant librarian position from 706 hours a year to 914 hours per year, effective April 1, 2025, for an estimated annual wage, benefit, and other related costs of $3,647, and to further vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,775 for wage, benefits, and other related costs for the period of April 2025 to December 31st, 2025. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is 0.02 To speak, we have recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500, recommended by the Budget Committee 540. And to speak on this, we have Library Trustee Donna Ferguson.
Hi, I'm here today to discuss the need for an increase of 4 hours for the Assistant Children's Librarian position at the library. As many of you know, whether you are visiting the library during the weekday story times or just driving by during the summer, our children's department has become a vibrant, robust place to be. Our library in Litchfield, and especially the children's room, is a continuous hub of activity and social connections. Having more dedicated hours for an assistant librarian is becoming more critical as our attendance numbers continue to increase. Currently, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, the story times yield approximately 32 children and their caregivers, an increase of 28% over 2023, reaching the capacity for the entire children's room. Couple that with the knitting group and other programs upstairs, our parking lot is filled and our building is bursting at the seams. You see why increasing the assistant librarian's hours to support all of these programs for the library is a business necessity. On another note, the assistant librarian is cross-trained and can fill in for illness or vacation, support other departments during busy times, and function as senior staff when the librarians are not in the building. The future goal for the assistant children's librarian is to enable opportunities for the children's librarian to do more outreach to local schools and daycares. Outreach to the greater community promotes the library and its services and demonstrates the importance of literacy skills beginning at a young age. Libraries are not just for getting bucks. The library has become a haven for many families, new families in town. We find many folks move here and do not have family close by. We have witnessed over the years how many families have met at story time and their friendships grow, not only among the children, but parents and grandparents too. Our library is a gathering place for all residents. Everyone is welcome to join in on the activities, programs, and events. By supporting the library, you are also making the decision to support your neighbors and your friends. Your support helps the library continue to be a community center for people of all ages to gather, learn, and grow.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Article 18 will be on the ballot as presented. Article 19, Recreation Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $40,000 to be placed in the Recreational Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote is required. Estimated 2025 tax rate impact is 0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500, recommended by the Budget Committee 810. To speak on this, we have Selectman Steve Gannon.
Hello, everyone. With me, I also have the Chair of the Recreation Commission, Mr. Christopher Burns. In 2024, through RSA, they created the Recreation Expendable Trust Fund. In 2024, there was a balance of a little over $25,000. Last year, the Board of Selectmen, working with the Recreation Commission, approved the purchase of a security camera system to replace the one that was failing at Town Hall. So there's a new security camera system that covers Town Hall and some of the Royal Memorial Park. This leaves a balance of about $10,000 sitting in their expendable trust fund. So what we're seeking to do is add an additional $40,000, bringing the balance up to $50,000. For those who don't know, there's 7 parks in town that the Recreation Commission is responsible for. They're also responsible for, or they manage, I shouldn't say responsible for, they manage Talent Hall as well. Talent Hall was built in 1954. It's 71 years old. It's still holding strong, but we're starting to see a lot of wear and tear in areas that need to be replaced. Through the generous donation of the Pickleball Association, we had an engineer come in and climb under the floors of Talent Hall and identify areas that need to be addressed. He called out a couple, so we believe next year, hopefully, we'll be able to use some of these funds, if approved, to start putting some time and money into Talent Hall and repairing some of the issues that are lingering. And obviously, going forward, this fund will be used for additional items, not only at Talent Hall, but if there's any damage to any of the parks.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Article 19 will be on the ballot as presented.
Thank you.
We now have Article 20. Establish a PWW eminent domain expendable trust. To see if the town will vote to establish a PWW eminent domain expendable trust fund per RSA 3119-A for the purpose of funding the legal, engineering, and other costs of exploring the possibility of acquiring the portion of Pennachuck Waterworks system located within Litchfield by eminent domain and to raise and appropriate $100,000 to put in the fund, with this amount to come from unassigned fund balance. Further, to name the Select Board as agents to expend from this said fund. Recommendations required. Majority vote required. 2025 tax rate impact $0. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500. Recommended by the Budget Committee 900. To speak on this, we have Town Administrator Kimberly Kleiner and Selectman Chair Bob Leary.
So good afternoon. There's a whole lot of information here, so we'll try to get through it as quickly, and you can ask questions, as I'm sure you might have some. So just some background. In 2011, the city of Nashua purchased Pennachuck, right? And I'm sure many of you are aware, because it's one of the things that I've heard most in my office is those of you that have been unfortunate enough to have to go off of your wells and go on to Pennachuck water have seen high water rates, increasingly high, and a lot higher than Pennachuck waterwork ratepayers who are in Nashua and Merrimack, Bedford, and over that way. So when the city of Nashua bought them, they swore to remain 3 separate companies, right? Pennachuck Waterworks, Nashua, Merrimack over that way, which I just mentioned. Pennachuck East, which is Litchfield, Londonderry, and some smaller towns, and then Pittsfield, which is the town of Pittsfield. What we've seen, and you've had like 2 rate increases in the past 6 years, our rates continue to climb. So last year, in 2023, the Board of Selectmen had an engineering study done to see what the approximate cost would be for the town of Litchfield to buy its system, right? The infrastructure that's located on the property that you own. Similar to what you may know about the town of Hudson did years and years and years ago. We went through that study and it looked very favorable for the town, and then the Pennachuck Corporation decided it was going to file a merger. So, for the past few months, since probably February of 2023, we have been attending town council, the Mitchell Group and I, hearings with Pennachuck Corporation on merging Pennachuck Waterworks, Pittsfield, and Pennachuck East into one corporation, still owned by the city of Nashua. The final hearing for that was January 14th, and that was approved. The process took about 10 months. So here you'll see all of these are now Pennachuck Corporation, still owned by the city of Nashua. Pennachuck claimed that Pennachuck East was unable to operate their systems under the current Pennachuck structure at a rate that was going to be affordable. So that's what they claimed to the PUC, Public Utility Court, was their reason for the merger. They forecasted that water rates for Pennachuck East and Pittsfield would have gone over what the EPA sets as a affordability water index. And they said that merging the 3 would result in a sustainable operating structure and lower rates for all customers. It would definitely save Pennachuck money from reduced costs because they'd have 1 rate case that they have to file with the PUC, and currently they have to do 3, 1 for each company, 1 annual report, 1 set of financials, I mean, on and on. We know what those could be. Revenue projections and proposed rates were calculated on a 2022 test year. So post-merger, City of Nashua still owns the company. Cancellation of Pennachuck East and Pennachuck Pittsfield. Amendment of the bylaws for which the company will operate. And those bylaws will now include 2 new directors to Pennachuck Corporation. 1 appointed by the Nashua Board of Aldermen, and 1 appointed by the Mayor of Nashua. Pennachuck also gets to recover the costs of the merger up to $400,000 through rates to the customers over the next 10 years. And they have to file within 90 days with the PUC on what that cost will be. Pennachuck Waterworks will include calculations of annual financing, and they're gonna restructure debt, basically. The claim is that Pennachuck East had higher debt rates than Pennachuck Corporation, so they have figured that they can capitalize on savings by restructuring this debt. They do say for Pennachuck ratepayers that are in the current Pennachuck Waterworks, which is again Nashua and Merrimack, their rates are going to increase about 9.95%. They also claim that Pennachuck East and Pittsfield and us over on this side of the river will see substantial savings. Again, this is all classified on restructuring of debt and a 2022 test year. So the settlement recommends, going forward that there's going to be another rate case in 2025. So they get to, so these rates, don't anyone get too excited because we don't know where they'll go. But here you see it is a different rate structure. So, and just to classify, this is very different. And if you want to bring in your water bills, we will be glad to walk you through what the impact would be to you, because the fixed rate goes up. So the fixed rate just for your service coming into your home, that rate goes up. The volume rate on the amount of cubic feet that you use, that goes down. That is great for some, but there's 3 tiers of usage. So there's those that use, maybe a limited supply of a smaller household, and you use it for your general water and showering and that's one rate. If you have a larger family and you use more and you have more bathrooms and things, that goes up. And then there's a third, those that use it for irrigation and have large families and many bathrooms, and that's another rate. Overall, you will see savings most likely in Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 3 is questionable. You will probably not see significant savings if you are in Tier 3 and you are using Pennachuck water for a large amount of irrigation and things of that sort. So where'd we go with this? The rates, let me put it this way. The town of Litchfield, the town of Londonderry, the town of Bedford were what we call interveners in the proceedings, right? So we got to sit in the proceedings and hear the proceedings and give our recommendations going forward. That does not mean that the town is, granting its recommendation for the merger. It's basically saying that we are following the process and that we will give recommendations if we are asked. At one point we were asked, and one of the things that we recommended was giving the Pennachuck East customers some sort of representation on this new board. Again, there were members added for the city, but there were not members added for the town of Litchfield. That was one of our requests. So the town's concern is age of infrastructure. So Litchfield's system, as we know from our engineering reports, is healthy, relatively new in comparison to the city of Nashua, who has one of the oldest infrastructures in the Pennachuck system. The town's was bought, most of our infrastructure was used by St. Gobain money. So Pennachuck did not pay for it. Where there are some towns that were not part of the St. Gobain settlement, and they have to replace infrastructure going forward. The rates were built off the 2022 test case. You know, so that's a number of years ago, and where do those rates fall in the next few years? Increasing corporate costs. So are we going to see our costs rise over the merger in their union contracts or in their lease agreements? That's all unknown. And then in this new settlement, our fire hydrant costs went up. So even if there is savings to our residents, we know even with the initial settlement, our hydrant costs went up, which ultimately goes back to you because it's all part of the operating budget. And Nashua and some of the municipalities who have a larger commercial base and multifamily presented that they were very concerned over what this tiered rate was going to do to their commercial and their multifamily group. And so there is some going forward, some special emphasis to look at that to see if that needs to be adjusted in future rate cases. So when you have multifamilies, and I'll just take the city of Nashua for one example, and there's one main coming, there might be one main coming into the multifamily with 6 units. At this point, they don't have a really good system for how to estimate that gets proportioned out to the different. So they need to look at that going forward. So that's another concern. So. Yeah.
I'm going to dumb it down for everybody. She's very good with all that high-tech talk. Basically what it means is, a couple of years ago, a couple of us selectmen and the town administrator went and we sat with the people from Hudson who orchestrated their buyout. They were very good. They've been very good the whole way. They've been offering to help us the whole time. Hudson's water rates over the last 22, 23 years since they did this have not gone up. They have bought a couple of things through warrant articles to like upgrade parts of the system that needed, but it's been very, very minimal, okay? So we thought as a town, because water rates is pretty tough. I'm on a well, so I don't have a water rate, but I do have portion of my tax bill goes to the fire hydrants. Fire hydrants are scheduled to go up $25,000 roughly under this, right off the bat. So you might see a savings in your home bill, but you're going to get it on the tax end, okay? Because the water rate's going to go up. Another thing that's really kind of should stick in your craw a little bit is them being able to charge you for them merging their companies. You get no benefit from it. They're just merging and you're going to pay for it. Also, if they upgrade their infrastructure, the pipes and things like that, to be able to pass that on to you, to the taxpayers of Litchfield, with no benefit to us, okay? So this is just a preliminary step to try and get this ball rolling to see where we want to go. Do we want to take this? Is it going to be financially viable for the town? Is it a benefit? And if it is, then we'll move forward next year, okay? It by no means locks us into anything, though, okay? I would take any questions if you have them.
All right, questions or comments?
Did I dumb it down enough? Good. Now I understand it.
Vina Pettit, 132 Page Road. Should you be considering hiring someone to look at the rate structure on how they're charging Litchfield residents for the water, to see if they're overcharging and we have the potential to really lower rates? And are there experts out there that you could hire, and if so, how much? And should that be, rolled into this?
So During the past 10 months of hearings, there were many financial experts brought in to look at the new merged rates, right? And as we state, you know, for some Litchfield residents, you will see some savings. It's going forward that is the question, because now, as the city of Nashua or Bedford or anyone does infrastructure costs, everybody is going to pay that expense. And there's some estimates on what that will be, but not many. That's a very difficult thing to do. But there has been financial analysis that's been done on the town of Litchfield's current rates and the proposed rates from the merger. We have that information.
Okay, now, do you think the merger was being proposed in response to what Litchfield's been trying to do here? And if so, I mean, gee, isn't that something that's really underhanded to do?
All I can say is that Pennachuck was very aware that the town of Londonderry and the town of Litchfield were both undergoing studies on eminent domain and what their cost of their infrastructure would be. We are both undergoing that. It was well documented. Pennachuck was aware. They've supplied information to our contractors, and about 6 months later, they decided to merge their company. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. Corey Flint, 123 Hillcrest. First, let me say that I have never paid more for water in my entire life than in Litchfield, New Hampshire. I have lived in a desert and irrigated my lawn and paid a quarter of what we're paying here. What kind of timeline are we looking at if we decide to move forward on eminent domain on the water system?
That's a great question. So our contractors did a lot of work, right, on the old rates. There's a study, they know the system. Now they need to update that, looking at the new rates of the merged company. And there's a cost. When you take something by eminent domain, and I'm gonna kind of put it in hopefully terms that are understandable, because it's quite complicated. And George Sansucci, who is our new utility appraiser for utilities that Selectman Queenan spoke about in the Property Revaluation Trust, he's an expert in this, so we'll be working with him as well as the Mitchell Group and our engineering experts. There's a cost because when we withdraw from the system, right, the other ratepayers are impacted by that to some extent. And that is like a penalty that you have to pay. And that's the cost that our experts need to really work out. We believe that cost probably is reduced, but those are things I would estimate. We'd have to come back. Nothing happens without us coming back to the residents with a warrant article to move forward. Like nothing, this isn't the Board of Selectmen decide, only the residents would decide this. We are hoping that we can come back before next town meeting.
Okay.
That
so
would require a special meeting.
probably a minimum of a year and a half to two to get this done with a.
I would say a year, within a year. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of work already done.
Yeah, I understand eminent domain cases are quite complicated with a lot of complicated math involved, but and there's a hearing involved as well through
The
justice.
PUC does have to weigh in. They do have to approve it, yes.
Okay.
Yes. there is.
Thank you.
Fay Opening is 15 Review Circle. So this warrant article will put us in a place where we're able to continue forward when we're making this decision. Is that true? Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Article 20 will be on the ballot as presented. So now we have completed all our warrant articles for today's deliberative session. Please remember that voting on these articles will be March 11th from 7 to 7 in this gymnasium. School deliberative session is next weekend on Saturday at 10 a.m. That's back in the auditorium where we should be. Is there any other business to come before the meeting today? I don't see any. Please remember to turn in your ballot sheets in the front tables or on the way out. Hearing no requests for further business at this time, I will accept a motion to adjourn the meeting. I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? The ayes have it. The meeting is now closed at 4:24 p.m. Thank you all for coming today. It's fun. Huh? Yeah, it might have been.